I know. Me, so I can give them times, but you can sit. I just put my first there. Y'all fit? You look like you're hanging off the edge. Got an arm and a leg out. You look so excited. I know. I love your crab. Did you do it? No, I got it from you. The Dirty Business, actually. Oh, it's so cute. But you have a good eye for that, of course. I am ready. Hello and welcome to the Global Conversation. It's a joint summit on environmental concern organized with our colleagues from Newcastle University in England. This event is being live streamed. It's appearing on multiple platforms, including the United Nations website, so we're very excited. I'm Laurie Kasovich. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Mass Communication at Nichols. I've worked with the Nancy Sanderson Mathern Global Institute for 2 years. I had the immense pleasure to visit with this group, several of them in this group, to present with students in March. So we were able to go to them, and now they've come to us. This program has given our students an amazing opportunity to be able to develop their skills, to be able to showcase their talents, and share their stories with a global audience. So it's been an amazing program for us and our students. I hope for you as well. We'd like to thank the Mathern family for their generous support of the Institute, as well as the National Wildlife Federation, the Restore the Mississippi River Delta Coalition, who have been amazing with their grant support for our projects, so we couldn't do it without them. We do have a short video with a few images from some of our projects over the last 2 years, just to kind of give you an idea of what we've been up to. You can do it at the end as well.
To Louisiana to see this Zydeco band. They're dancing in the ballrooms, they're dancing in the street. When they hear my Zydeco, you know they got to move that beat. Come on everybody, let's go Zydeco down in Louisiana.
Good. Well, it was a fun party while it lasted, right? All right. It is also so nice for us to have our friends from Newcastle visit us here in the Bayou region. Like I said, it was so great for us to be able to come, to go, and we're grateful to have them here. We're excited to show off this place that we think is so special, a little hot, but very special and very unique, and a really cool complement to all of the things that we've learned in the spring. I also want to take a moment to recognize some special guests. We do have Dr. Todd Keller, who is our Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs at Nichols. Thank you so much for being here. Yes, you may clap. This is a truly important, cool event. We also have an excellent selection of speakers today. There's more complete biographical information in your programs, but I do want to briefly introduce each one. I'm going to introduce our friends from Newcastle who are here first. They're going to speak first, and then I'm going to introduce our local experts who are going to be coming after them, but it'll be a seamless transition, so I'm going to introduce them all now. From Newcastle, I have Anne-Marie Lacey. She's a senior lecturer in public relations with 15 years of experience in communication. We have Dr. Rob Mackay, a senior lecturer in composition whose work with sound explores the connections between sound, space, and environment. We have Patient Matambo, a communications lecturer who is a corporate communications specialist. We have Dr. Paulina Crunchy, a lecturer in public relations who has worked with organizations including UNICEF and Bloomberg Media Initiative Africa. We also have Dr. Jesus Salazar, a lecturer in public relations who specializes in digital media. We have Jonathan Ward, a senior lecturer in public relations with a background in political journalism. And of course, we have team leader Kelly Daniels, who grew up in Grand Caillou and is now a lecturer at Newcastle and is the founder of the Students Against Species Extinction, which is this is off script, but a phenomenal group that we got to join in several kind of casual events. They are amazing students doing super cool things in Newcastle. Our presenters from the Bayou region, we have got Wendell Curall, who served as the general manager of the South Lafourche Levee District for some time and is a well-respected local expert on environmental topics on the Louisiana coast. He also wrote a super cool book for children about Louisiana history, which he just gave me. It's super cute. We also have Dr. Gary LaFleur, Jr., who is a biology professor at Nichols. He is the director for the Center for Bayou Studies. We have Lacey Melanson, who's executive director of the Coastal Center at Nichols, which, if you drive by the new building, is gorgeous. We're all jealous. And we have Alicia Renfro, a coastal scientist with the National Wildlife Federation working on the Mississippi River Delta Restoration Campaign. I know you are all eager to hear what our speakers had to say, so I'll turn it over to them. We're going to start with our guests from the UK, as I said before, who are going to share for about 90 minutes. There will, not each, cumulatively, there will be time reserved for questions after each presenter concludes, so you will be able to ask these experts that we brought all the way to you, whatever may come to your minds. We're then going to take a short break, and then the Nichols contingent is going to make their presentations, which is going to follow that same basic format. So with that, Ms. Daniels, I pass it over to you.
Great. Well, Lori, thank you so much. Thank you all so much for having us, James. We really appreciate being invited and for this opportunity. So I thank Nichols and everybody who was affiliated with helping us get over here. I'm only the team leader in the sense that I actually booked the flights and did all the admin work. But let's hear what they have to say. I don't want to eat into too much time. You're going to hear from me a little bit later. But first, I want to introduce Anne-Marie Lacey and Jonathan Ward. They're going to tell us a little bit about the Northeast and make an introduction to you about where we're from, what we do, and just kind of give you a little bit of a flavor about what we're bringing over here to you guys. So I hope you enjoy. Anne-Marie, Jonathan.
Thank you very much. Right. Ready to go? Well, there's the first slide. Okay. So, thank you very much. Yeah, so as Kelly said, we're here to set the scene, to explain to you whereabouts, to give you a sense of place of where we're from in the northeast of England. And I think we got selected for this because we are from the northeast of England. We're from very close to Newcastle, where the university is, not far away, and we've pretty much lived there and worked there most of our careers, haven't we? So we are kind of like you Louisiana people with a kind of
But with a northeastern accent.
yes, I hope you can all hear, understand our accents.
Understand what we're saying.
We are tempering our accents down a little bit. There we go.
Can we have the next slide, please? Oh, other way.
So yeah, just very that way. Yeah. So very briefly, there's me. There's a bio on me. I'm a senior lecturer in the School of Arts and Cultures. 5 of us here today are from the MA in Media and Public Relations, and I've worked there for about 10 or 11 years on that program. I'm also, at the moment, the global lead for the School of Arts and Cultures, which is kind of about international student experience, international student recruitment, a little bit about research profile as well. Previous to that, how did I get into academia? I worked as a journalist for about 9 years, and then also in public relations for about 9 years as well. So kind of various careers that landed up teaching that practical aspect, which is an important part, Anne-Marie, isn't
It is, yes. So I'm Anne-Marie, and I'm also a senior lecturer at Newcastle in Public Relations. I teach on the MA programme, but I also teach on the undergraduate, so I get our babies and see them all the way through. And I often joke that I'm not a proper academic. I refer to myself as being a pracademic because I'm very much from practice. So I've worked in public relations all my professional life. I still work in public relations. I'm still a working PR practitioner right now. I just happen to know and understand the theory and can help to translate that for our students in terms of what does the theory look like in practice, and merging those boundaries between the worlds of academia and industry. So as well as being a working PR practitioner and a senior lecturer at Newcastle, one of my roles at the university is sector and industry liaison. So part of my job is to help coach and mentor and support the students to find experiences and to find their way into the workplace, or to support them through into further academia pursuits if that's what they wish. I'm also heavily involved with the CIPR, the Chartered Institute of Public Relations. I guess it's the PRSA's equivalent. And full disclosure, I am a board director, so I'm for until the end of my term, I'm partly responsible for helping to run the institute for our members in the UK and across the globe as well. Next slide, please. So you might have spotted at the bottom of our slides that the university's strapline is from Newcastle for the world, and it's a bit ironic really that Jonathan and I are up here doing this presentation because neither of us are from Newcastle. We just happen to work there. You can see on the map that we put there's kind of a zoomed out version of what the Northeast looks like, and then we've zoomed right in to show you how close Newcastle, Sunderland, Durham and Hartlepool is. So I'm from just outside of Durham. If anyone's watched any of the Harry Potter films, where they play Quidditch, that is filmed inside of Durham Cathedral. I live about 10-15 minutes from there, so I'm very much from the Harry Potter land. Not Hogwarts, but from the where it was shot. And Jonathan lives just outside of Hartlepool as well. So we're from Newcastle as in the university, but not from Newcastle as in the city. And this sense of place is going to form a really important part of what we'd like to talk to you about today, because if we move to the next slide, please. Although they are very different, distinct cities, they are collectively the northeast of England. But there's lots of regional rivalries and proud communities, and this is really at the heart of what we're going to talk about and the theme of our talk today around culture, community, and communications, because a lot of the work that we've been involved in has been about how do we preserve the culture of the past to tell the stories to future generations that help really underpin this sense of place and who we are and where we're from. So there's a lot of, it's almost tribe-like at times, isn't it? You know, are you from Newcastle or are you from Sunderland? And there's this rivalry that dates back centuries and centuries and centuries. So people from Newcastle are typically called Geordies because they were very loyal to King George. Newcastle seems to be a bit more cosmopolitan, a bit more kind of culture and vibrant, whereas Sunderland was where there was a lot of industry. It was really the heart of the shipbuilding of the time, and so people from Sunderland are often called Mackhams because they used to mack the ships and then trade them on. So if you're a Geordie from Newcastle or a Mackham from Sunderland. And that's really quite important because there's also two very big football clubs in the region, Newcastle United and Sunderland. So that again, there's a sense of, who do you support? Where are you from? Where's your kind of allegiance lie to? I'm going to pass on that note to Jonathan because I should be a big football fan. My husband's a semi-professional referee, actually. Well, soccer for you guys. But Jonathan's a big football aficionado, so I'll hand over to him to explain that a little bit more.
Yeah, if we go to the next slide, so as Anne-Marie is saying, it's a very industrially proud heritage region, and regional rivalry plays a huge part in that. There's a huge sense of community. Probably, beyond kind of Scotland, the northeast of England has probably the strongest sense of community in the whole of England. We're much closer to Scotland than London, by the way. We're about 300 miles from London. So I know about 100 miles from Edinburgh, just to kind of give the sense of place. So yeah, so regional rivalry plays into that because it's driven from the communities that have grown up through the shipbuilding industry, the mining industry, the coal mining industry. More recently in the 20th century, 21st century, the kind of the steel making industry on Teesside, and also chemical industry as well. So regional rivalry can be competitive, it can be fierce. It's best exemplified in the two very big football clubs, probably, although not success-wise, but two of the biggest clubs in England. And I'm pleased to say that my team, Sunderland, has just been promoted to the Premiership, so watch out for them next season. I will be, because I'm a season ticket holder. But actually, for this presentation, just to give you a sense of the photograph as well, so, Anne-Marie was talking about Newcastle being a bit more of the kind of the cultural capital
A bit
now.
more cosmopolitan.
Yeah, so you can see in the image there, we've got the Millennium Bridge, and we've got, I think you can see the Tyne Bridge through there, and the Sage Music Centre now, which is actually now known as the Glass House. And then that building in the foreground is the former Baltic Flour Mill, which is actually now known as the Baltic Contemporary Arts Galleries. That's been open about 25 years now, and it's one of the leading art galleries, contemporary art galleries in the northeast of England. And a lot of that cultural centre of Newcastle is based around the river and the quayside. It's a really vibrant restaurant kind of area. And then the photographs below, just about 11 miles away is Sunderland. So you can see Sunderland is a coastal city. It's actually bigger in population than Newcastle, but they're so close together. Population of about 300,000. And you can see how the river formed the basis of that industry. So at one time there were dozens of shipyards. I can vaguely remember, I grew up in Sunderland. My dad worked in the shipbuilding industry all of his life. And up until the 1940s, it was the biggest shipbuilding town in the world. The last shipyards closed at about mid-1990s. So it's been, industrial decline there. But actually, for this presentation, we're focusing specifically, if you remember on that first map, the East Durham coastal area, because you guys are looking at Louisiana and the coastal area here. We wanted to focus on that East Durham coastline. So next slide, please. Yeah, so this is an area which County Durham had more coal mining pits than probably anywhere else in the world in the 18th and 19th century. I think 500 pits, there you go, 500 coal pits in County Durham. There are now, I think there's one in Northumberland, which is not Ellington, but there's one in Northumberland, which is an open cast mine. So we've gone from being the industrial powerhouse that drove the 19th century industrial revolution in the UK and Great Britain to absolutely no coal mining industry whatsoever. But that East Durham coastline bit, that coastal pathway, up until sort of the 1980s, 1990s, was an industrial wasteland. All the beaches and beautiful coastline was decimated by waste and coal, and from the mines, the coal waste and what's known as slag was all kind of put out into the sea, dumped in the sea. So it took a generation and decades to clean up that coastline. And there's been, I'll show in a moment, but there's been a lot of projects to regenerate that coastline, bring tourists, put cultural heritage at the heart of that place. And this is, it's a really special place to me because this is the community where I grew up, very, very close, about sort of 3-4 miles from that coastline, from some of these villages that you can see here. I grew up in a pit village, Anne-Marie grew up in a pit village as well. My pit closed in 1996, so it still kind of was going till fairly recently. But as the industry has declined, the focus has been much more on regenerating this coastline and recognizing it as a beautiful place for natural flora and fauna, but also industrial heritage. So we've got museums like the world famous Beamish Museum, which is a whole town that's been recreated across, and it takes you back to 18th century to 1950s now, and various communities to tell you what the Northeast was like. And also the picture with the pit wheel there, that's Woodhorn Colliery up in Northumberland, which is like, it's not a working colliery, but you can go and visit it and go underground, but there's lots of arts associated with that. But also there's a whole coastal pathway which runs between Hartlepool, where I live, and Sunderland. It's about 18 miles. It's a whole pathway. And flora and fauna has returned. We've had massive returns of grey seals, common seals, common terns, dolphins and whales. We had an orca whale about 2-3 weeks ago, just off the coast of mine. You wouldn't have got that 20, 30 years ago. So there's a lot of kind of focus on the tourism side, particularly on the wildlife flora and fauna. So next slide, please. Thank you. There we go. So you can see just on this image of the map, the dots in red are colliery closures in the 1960s, and then the dots in blue are the ones that still remained in the 1960s. And actually, I won't point to it, but the village where my parents still live and grew up in is on there, just outside Sunderland. But there are none of those pits left, and this is 1960s. You know, in the 1800s there were over 500 pits in this coal mining pits in this area. But that heritage is still massively celebrated. Once a year we have something called the Durham Miners Gala. Can you show that? Yeah.
Flash dance, what a feeling.
Yeah, what a feeling.
Should have brought our leg warmers, Jonathan.
So actually that clip is actually taken just from last Saturday afternoon. So every year they have what's known as the Durham Miners Gala, otherwise known as the Big Meet, because every colliery community from across, not just the Northeast, but the whole of England, goes to Durham as a celebration for that culture and that community. And every village, every pit brings its own banner, and they walk through the streets. It's very much associated with brass bands, which is interesting.
Most pits had their own brass band, didn't they?
So there's the link with Louisiana as well, and the jazz there. Brass bands are a really big thing in the northeast of England. So every pit would have a brass band, and I went last year. I didn't go this year because I wasn't coming here. But it attracts some of the leading politicians. You get musicians, celebrities come along to be associated with it. It's a big celebration of the mining community and what it means to people. So the 139th, that tells you how long it's been going, was just last Saturday afternoon. The weather was amazing.
Had a good weekend.
There we go. So, on to the next slide. There we go. There's a couple of clips here. So some of you may have been here, or that, you've been to this area, but you may think, wow, can we position it? And Anne-Marie's talked about, yes, the Harry Potter, that used in movie scenes there, but other movies that you might have recognized it in. Has anybody seen the opening of Blade Runner? So the kind of the the kind of the futuristic scene, that's based on Teesside, the petrochemical industry there. And also the opening of Alien 2, they used these beaches, these decimated coal-covered beaches from the 1980s. I haven't got a clip of that one. And the reason being that the director Ridley Scott, who did Blade Runner and Alien 2, is from this region. And he went to Art College in Hartlepool, which is the town where I live now. But two movies you might have seen, just to show it sets the context. So has anybody heard of or seen Get Carter, famous UK gangster movie? Not going to let you play them?
Sorry, a bit tight on time.
That's okay. So I'll give you, so it's just to give a bit of context. So Get Carter with Michael Caine. You know Michael Caine. So it's a very gritty British crime drama. And the closing scene, the protagonist, Michael Caine, gets shot at the end. Basically, I'm There you go, there's a spoiler. And it's on a beach called Black Hole. And this was very close to where I grew up. And I can remember this this kind of pulley system. It's not a ski lift. This is actually 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, dumping coal and waste into the sea for about 50, 60 years, constantly. Now, I can remember this when I was a kid. It went in about 1982, I think, they took those things down. You could not go on that beach. It was under about 3-4 foot of waste and coal and mess, and it was known as the, not a very nice term, but it was known as the Slag Beach because it was just full of waste and horribleness. So if we could show that, if we could have seen that clip, you could see how bad it was. Anybody seen Billy Elliot? Yeah, you're all familiar with that. 1999, a Hollywood smash. That was filmed about a mile or two up the coast from Black Hole in the town of Easington. Now, Easington is probably the heart of the Northeast mining community, a very famous mining town. It had a horrible pit disaster in the 1950s where about 150 people died. But Billy Elliot set in the 1980s during the miners' strike in 1984-85 about the little boy who his dad wanted him to go down the pit and do boxing, but he rejected that and became the ballet dancer. So it's a fantastic, great musical film. And the clip we wanted to show you there just had Billy dancing through with joy through the streets along the coastline. And you can see how the same beaches have transformed in about a 20-year period to beautiful with wildflowers and meadows and things like that. It looks really, really wonderful, and that's kind of how it looks now. So next time you watch Billy Elliot, you've got a reference point to it. It's all filmed in Easington. And actually, I was thinking about when Lacey, where's she? Lacey, there she is. Yeah, this morning when you were talking to us, you were talking about where you grew up and the primary schools closing down because the communities, the hearts was ripped out of these communities. So there was no industry left. And I was thinking about, Easington Comprehensive School, which is a secondary school, had about 1,800 pupils, and it closed. And all those that, I know friends of mine whose kids go there, or friends of mine now, and they all had to go to different schools 10, 15 miles away. So that kind of reminded me of that, the end of these industries, what it can do to communities hasn't really recovered. Okay, so moving on to what we're going to be talking about next, I'm going to give you like a general overview, what's actually happened, how has this coastal region kind of regenerated itself, and talk briefly about two projects. So next slide, please. And so the main initiative, going back to the late 1990s, this was when I was working in journalism, in local journalism there, with doing political stories, etc. The Turning the Tide Partnership, and it was really sort of brought in late 90s with the Tony Blair government in the UK. Tony Blair was a local MP to us, about 5-10 miles away in a town called Sedgefield, and saw this opportunity to bring together various central government funding with local authority funding as well to start cleaning up this coastline, because it's a beautiful part of the coast, to kind of to regenerate it. So initially lots and lots of money going in, focusing on coastal pathways, and initially cleaning up how do you get all this waste from the beach and starting to regenerate it. Kids, young people growing up now, they would not recognize what I remember in the 80s and early 1990s. Can you show just a couple of minutes of this, because it'll give you context, but it's 9 minutes long, so I won't play the whole thing, but maybe just a couple of minutes. If it works, there we go. This is what it did look like.
The Durham coast 20 years ago. Home to the biggest coal mine in Europe and to some of the worst coastline pollution in the world. This 12-kilometre stretch of beach was buried under no less than 2.5 million tonnes of colliery waste every year. In some places it was 10 metres deep, a no-go for man, animals, birds, and a massive threat to the flora which inhabited this extremely rare magnesium limestone outcrop, known locally as the beach banks. And thanks to 100 years of dumping colliery waste, the devastation extended.
There we go, we're going to move on. Yeah. Okay, thank you. So you can see that the Turning the Tide partnership initially sort of recognises an opportunity, initial investment, and then private sector was involved, but lots of kind of the local voluntary sector, local authorities teaming together, working in partnership very well. A bit like the Coastal Centre that we learned about, or we're going to learn about a little bit later, brings together, central government, federal, state funding. It was the same in England as well, bringing together these organisations. Now that's, next slide please, is kind of managed by, again, a group of the North East local authorities partnered together to call something called the Heritage Coast Partnership. And its focus really, I guess, is around culture and community and tourism. And you can see here, we're going to focus, Anne-Marie in a moment is going to focus on Seaham, a few projects there. But Seaham is a little town that when I was growing up was a no-go area, but now it's kind of like seen as a really attractive place to live. It's got a fantastic 5 or 6 star spa. Next slide, please. So there we go. So you're going to talk about Seaham Harbour?
Yeah, so I mentioned in my introduction that I'm a working PR practitioner, and I just wanted to share with you very quickly, because I'm conscious of time, a couple of examples of PR projects that I've supported over the years. So one of the big ones for me was Seaham Harbour Marina. And as Jonathan said, and as you saw in some of those video clips, 10, 15, 20 years ago, you would never think about going to the marina for a day out, or you would never pop to the marina to go and get an ice cream, or where can we go with our families today? And so the Marina project was the coming together of lots of different groups, authorities, different funding streams from local council, from heritage lottery funds, from local philanthropists coming together who have a shared recollection and history of the area and wanting to preserve some of those cultures and stories to embed into the regeneration of the project. So just quickly, some of the key aspects included a new marina that is now at full capacity with all the berths full. A water sports centre, so they're literally right on the beach. So they now have built a purpose-built water sports centre where people now come to learn how to surf or kayak or water ski. There's a lovely, you can see that building on the left-hand side is a shopping complex. There's lots of little boutique independent retailers there. They do some brilliant burgers and ice creams, not that I'm biased. And the regeneration of the docks as well. And that included lots of different signage and lots of different interpretation and bringing people together to talk about the stories and what should we say and how can we preserve these things for future generations as well. Next slide, please. One of my favourite stories from the regeneration of the marina is the lifeboat house. So the marina was built by Lord and Lady Londonderry. They owned some of the coal mines and they recognised that they needed a place to ship their coal from. And that if you're going to have a harbour, you need to have a provision for saving lives at sea. So they have an RNLI lifeboat house there. And you can see what it looked like, the state it was in before the regeneration, and what it is now. It's now been turned into a heritage centre. But there's also a really nice story attached to this as well. If we can just move to the next slide, please. Oh, back one, sorry. So there's a story about the lifeboat called the George Elmy. Has anyone ever heard of the George Elmy before? No? So this will be an interesting one for you. So it was commissioned by a lady called Miss Elizabeth Elmy. She asked for 2 lifeboats to be made, 2 sister lifeboats, and one was going to be called George in memory of her late husband, and that was going to be kept and docked and stationed at Seaham Harbour Marina. Next slide, please. And the George Elmy became a bit of a local legend. It did its job, so it responded to 26 calls for assistance. It rescued over 20 people in the 12 years that it was stationed there. That is until the night of the 17th of November 1962. And if you ask people in Seaham what happened that night in November in 1962, they can tell you exactly what happened. So there was a call for some help. The lifeboat went out. It was in pretty challenging conditions. They got everybody back on board. They were making their way back into the harbour when there was a very random riptide current and everybody went oversea, and all bar one of those lives was lost, just a few feet really away, a few metres away from the marina. The boat was reclaimed, it was kind of patched up, it was used in sort of fishing communities, and then it just kind of disappeared. Nobody really knew what happened to the George Elmy or where it went or what it was being used for. at the same time, lots of different people came together who had that shared interest in the culture and the community and the history and the stories of these places, and set up a heritage group. And as luck would have it, one of those volunteers happened to be on eBay one day and happened to go, "That's the George Elmy." And with the loan of a local fisherman, they were able to actually buy back the George Elmy, bring it back to Seam Harbour Marina, and restore it in the dock, which if you move to the next slide, please, there's the George Elmy, which now sits proud of place in the Heritage Centre. And what you can see there is also a sculpture called the Coxswain, which was later created, commissioned by an artist called Ray Lonsdale. And Ray Lonsdale's work is huge across the northeast, if we just move on really quickly. And you can see some sculptures here. So that the one on the left is known locally as Tommy, and it's a World War I soldier. So if you say to anyone in the northeast, "I'm going to go for a walk and I'm going to go and see Tommy," you know that you are going to the headland and that you're going to go and stop by at the statue of the Tommy soldier. The other one to the side of it is from a pit not too far either, and I believe it's called the Mara, and the word Mara means friend or mate. It's one of those pit languages that's been preserved as part of the local culture as well. So you'll often greet and say, "You all right, Mara?" That means hello, friend, or how are you? So that is called Mara as well. And I just wanted to share this quote from the East Durham Heritage Group because it really sums up what the work has been all about there. And they said that without knowing our past, how can we know and appreciate our present and our future? And that really is the ethos of what they are all about. Next slide, please. The very, very last little story that I want to share with you is another coastal project that I worked on, and that was around Roker Lighthouse. So Roker is up the road slightly in Sunderland. It was built during the Victorian era by an engineer called Henry Hay Wake. And the interesting thing about this pier and the lighthouse is that there was a lot of kind of myths and legends surrounding it. So we knew that it was being developed and built with very clever solutions, but what exactly were those solutions and how have they been kind of embedded into the stories that we tell in Sunderland today? So the last lighthouse keeper was a guy called John Johnson, and he held the position until the lighthouse was automated in 1964. So before that date, him and his predecessors would literally move from the lighthouse cottage on the shoreline into the lighthouse at the end of the pier and physically go and light the gas lantern at the very top of the lighthouse. What's interesting, though, is that lighthouse sits 609 metres out into the North Sea, and it's very, very treacherous conditions. So this idea of the solutions, what exactly were those solutions, and the myths and the urban legends that have been passed down from generation to generation? Well, actually, the solution was that pier that you see, 609 metres of it, is actually a tunnel. So there was, if you didn't know it existed, there was a sort of a porthole manhole outside of the lighthouse keeper's home. If you lifted it up, there was ladders, you could go down, and you would walk the full 609 metres underneath the pier in tiny, if you're claustrophobic, I wouldn't recommend at all, with the sounds of the waves crashing by you. You would walk the full 609 metres, there'd be another ladder at the other end, you'd go up and you were in the lighthouse. So if it was fine weather, you'd do the nice walk out there, not a piece of problem. But if you were going out there to light the lighthouse during those stormy conditions, and as you can see some of those waves there next to the lighthouse, he would take the route underneath. And that was one of those urban myths and legends until, again, local groups, heritage groups came together. Actually, one of the ladies who's on the Roker Pier Heritage Group is the great-granddaughter of the last lighthouse keeper as well. And it's kind of uncovering the secrets of the tunnel, and it's now actually being regenerated or preserved with a new, you can see that building on the bottom corner there, that's actually now the entrance into the tunnel, so you can go down there, and it's been open to the public now, so you can now do tours of the tunnel. I can tell you I've done it because I did the PR and comms for the launch of this, and I literally did the full thing with nails in the client's arm. You can see all the old gas lamps and everything, and it's the kind of the spooky stories that you hear. It's not for the faint-hearted. I did it to say I've done it and to be able to talk about it and help tell the stories. Would I do it again? No, thank you. I'll leave that to somebody else. So just to kind of come back full circle now and finish off, passing back to my colleague Jonathan.
Next slide, yeah. Yeah, we just wanted to bring, I think we sort of talked right at the start about the regional rivalries between the city, and hopefully you've got a sense of how important the heritage is to us, and you know, a sense of pride and community. All my family, on my mum's, particularly my mum's side, had coal miners, shipbuilders, etc. My dad worked in shipyards for 30, 40 years. So this quote, "Yes, I come from a city by the sea, and its shores and its waters have become part of me," is something that's very part of people who are from Sunderland, because it's not the Lake Poets as in Coleridge and Wordsworth. It's a young guy who sings in Sunderland a very famous song, and "City by the Sea" is a kind of a motto for people from the city of Sunderland.
It's like the brand.
Like the brand, it's the brand. So if you go to the last slide, there we go. And I was really pleased, you know, we talked about football at the start, but my football team, Sunderland AFC, just last week announced their new away kit, and to pay tribute to the heritage of the area, they talked about that they used a logo, an image of the lighthouse that Anne-Marie was telling you about as the focal point, because there's a sculpture where you can focus on the lighthouse, and it's been absolutely super successful. Every Sunderland fan in the world wants this. So it's only been out a week, by the way. I haven't got my version yet. So yeah, it's lovely that the very successful football club is paying tribute to that heritage as well. So hopefully that's the end. Thank you. We've given you a nice overview of where we're from, why it's very, very important to us. It was thanks for the opportunity to do this, because I'm very, very proud of where I'm from, and Anne-Marie is as well, so it was very, very good to have an opportunity to talk about that.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay. I'm not sure if you could hear us giggling when Jonathan was showing the football uniform, the new one. It's because all of our colleagues who are joining us from Newcastle might be Newcastle United supporters, and they're literally going, boo. I mean, you know, my husband included is probably watching this and going, oh, no. So the rivalry is real, right? It's like, yes. They literally wish the other ones unwell when they play. Only when they play. But I'm sure you could see a lot of similarities as you hear about, and they're kind of ahead of us. And I'm a kind of in the middle. So I'm from down here, but I live in Newcastle now. So when I say us, I mean kind of both things. I was born on the bayou, but yet I live, just off this coast as well. And you can see they're a little bit ahead of us. They had their industry that they heavily relied on shut down in the 80s. Ours isn't shut down, but we're looking for other ways and other things. And I think one of the really interesting things is the way that they've handled preservation of this and heritage. They're super, super proud of this coal mining past, which they absolutely should be. And we can talk a little bit more about this later during my presentation, but I want you to kind of notice that as we move along, because I think it's really important to kind of recognize how people handle heritage and how they speak about it and the communications around it. So next we're going to hear from three of our colleagues, Paulina, Patience, and Jesus, and they're going to talk a little bit about student global impacts and kind of this global partnership that we've formed. So I'll hand the mic over to them now, and join me in welcoming them to the podium.
So hi everyone, my name is Paulina. Now that Anne-Marie and Jonathan have told you where we come from, I want to tell you about how we prepare our students to be able to tell stories well. And Kelly will share with you how it all comes together actually through the work she does. She leads us to do with the students for Students Against Species Extinction. And so our presentation will be on internationalizing PR education. But before that, we will introduce ourselves. So my name is Paulina Crunchy. Originally, I come from Ghana, and it's the home of the largest man-made lake in the world, cocoa if you love chocolate, and gold. And so originally, before independence, we were called the Gold Coast. Almost all of my education was done in Ghana, but I did my PhD at the University of Westminster. And my research interests are in political PR, sustainability, CSR, and the green economy. I'll hand over to my colleague, and I'll come back to tell you about our research.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Patience Matambo, and I am from Botswana, which is in the southern part of Africa. So right down there, next to South Africa. So Botswana is grounded in a rich cultural heritage. So it's known for its vibrant culture and its success in conservation. And with that, I have learned so much about what conservation is about, and how this ties into how I teach my students as well. I've lived and studied across 3 continents, so this is shaped by diverse cultural experiences that I've had. I've studied in Australia, and obviously in Africa, and now I teach in the UK. So with all of that, I've learned what communication means and how I need to communicate in different ways. When you are running a campaign in Australia, when you're running a campaign in Botswana, when you're running a campaign in UK, these are all different countries. So you need to understand how you communicate a message that will resonate with your target audience. So I've learned all these, the multicultural voices and the importance of that as well. Botswana, again, one of my research interests is nation branding and strategic communication, but I'll tie that to Botswana as a country. It's home to the UNESCO World Heritage, the Okavango Delta, and the Chobe National Park as well. So Botswana has a rich conservation history, and it's quite successful. 40% of the land is actually set aside for national parks and game reserve. So this shows how they actually take conservation seriously. So if that's Okavango Delta there, and tourism, please visit. It's a very beautiful country. So that rich conservation and how Botswana actually communicates tourism is a way of people understanding strategic communication and the importance of culture and heritage, and how they brand themselves as a country. So I think this brings in a good part of that nature and conservation and the importance of it. So through that, I share these stories with my students, and this helps them understand what it means, to carry out different campaigns in different countries and how those messages are important to resonate with the target audiences.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jesus Salazar, and I was born and raised in a place not too far away from Thibodeau. I believe it's about a 10 or 11-hour drive from here. I am from a small town called Vallehermoso in the Mexican state of Tamaulipas, which borders Texas. So I grew up having this cultural interchange and this common culture with Texas as well. There's also a very common saying that in the north of Mexico, we have more in common with people in Texas than with people in Mexico City or in central and southern Mexico. Tamaulipas, is a very diverse state. We have a lot of microclimates. We have a biosphere reserve in the central part of the state, and we have a lot of environmental challenges with the wetlands in the southern part of the state, particularly near the area of Tampico. When I finished my bachelor's degree at the University of Tamaulipas, I studied communication sciences. I moved to Newcastle to study my master's degree, and then I stayed for the long haul to do the PhD. I had growing interests in digital media and particularly emerging technologies. So my research focused on the use of 360-degree video on VR headsets as a promotional tool in marketing communications for cultural tourism. And, sorry.
So you see how multicultural this team is. And it's interesting because we teach a very multicultural cohort at Newcastle University. And that is why we carried out this research. Dr. De La Haye, Professor De La Haye, I should say, who we heard about this morning on our tour, a lot of what we do is student-centered. And you'll find that for every one of our students, they come from a place. And when Laura came to Newcastle early this year, she was talking about the different issues of conservation across the world. And so we need to, like Patience said, talk through the context that these students have come from. And that is why we carried out the research to find out what the experiences are like, so that when they go out there to talk about issues of conservation, to talk about issues of corporate social responsibility, et cetera, they know how to communicate well. So by way of our research overview, we thought about looking at the large international cohorts that we have at Newcastle University for our MA Media and Public Relations program, and what they perceive of the program. So, like I've said, we have a multicultural cohort of students, and as you see later on, our students come from all over the world. And these students come with different educational experiences. So there are some who come from cultures where you do not question the professor. The professor is the authority. There are others who come from a background where you have to ask why of everything. And so how do we balance all of this? And so we needed to find out what teaching techniques work for us and for our students. And that is why, again, we carried out this research. So by way of research context, we know the increased competition in higher education due to globalization. And we know that universities are participating in global HEI rankings. So constantly we are checking our QS rankings to see how well we are doing as a university, because students are now choosing universities based on these QR rankings as well. So we need to improve standards, innovate in our educational offering, and be sure that we are providing value for our students. And then there is increased emphasis on skills for a global economy. And this morning, when we did a tour with Dr. Stewart, again, we saw the kind of work that Nicole State is doing, and which we're also trying to do the same, equip our students with the right kind of skills to be able to work wherever they find themselves. And then Banks talks about the importance of integrating diverse cultural perspectives in the curriculum to ensure that students understand global issues, like what we're talking about here, and to be able to work in their own context as well as in other contexts, and to gain an intercultural competence. Next slide. So, Anne-Marie has 15 years of experience as a PR practitioner. Jonathan has loads and loads of experience, same for all of us. And so this is an experienced PR team. We do not teach theory. We teach things that we have actually done, yeah? And then we have industry connections. We bring in guest speakers, including Professor Timothy Combs, who we brought, Liz Yeomans, Amanda Coleman, and a host of others to interact with our students. And our students get the opportunity to also go to industry to see what the latest happenings in public relations is like. And then we have opportunities to work with some of the very important charities that, like the Cross River Gorilla Project, and then NESMA and CIPR for learning and networking. This all ensures that our students get something practical. And so after doing all this, we need to be sure that the students see things from our point of view, whether we are making impact or not. So I'll hand over to Jesus.
Thank you. Yes, so as Paulina was mentioning, we teach in a very international program, and year after year we receive and welcome students from many, many different countries. Particularly a lot of students from most of Europe. We have had a few students coming from Africa. From South America, I believe we had a student from Colombia. And from North America, we received students mainly from Mexico, Canada, and the US. And I believe we had a student from Barbados as well. However, the big market for us, or the trend that we've seen over the past few years, is an increasing and an overwhelming majority of students coming from Asia, because there is a growing PR industry in Asian countries, particularly in China. So you may not be able to see the numbers because they're quite tiny on the slide, but we have that large dark blue circle that you see is represented by China. And then the largest minority, which is like an aqua green bluish color, is the UK, which is ironic because we teach in the UK. But then the rest of them are students from different countries, and they represent very, very small minorities. And what happens with this is that this brings a lot of challenges for the students themselves, but also for us as lecturers and teaching staff. Some of the challenges that we face, sometimes they have to do with communication, language barriers, cultural understandings as well. And sometimes there are things as simple as basic concepts that we use on our daily basis, such as PR, public relations. It's different. It's different everywhere. It's different how different countries and cultures conceive it. It's different when they see it as a process or as an industry or as a practice. So those are the type of challenges that we face on our day-to-day when we work with having such an international cohort. However, it's very enriching because we get to listen and learn from each other. It's very enriching because they bring their own perspective on things, and sometimes they even challenge our own views on specific things that we give for granted. As I said, like the concept of PR. We perhaps think that it's just a well-known concept or that it's pretty obvious to us, but then someone from a different country comes and gives you a different opinion on things, and that even challenged the way we perceive things. Well, with that in mind, we developed our methodology. So we started having conversations with our students, and we piloted our study by interviewing a handful of students and exchanging opinions in our staff common room. And you know how lecturers talk to each other, and how are you doing in your classes? Are you experiencing the same things? How are you managing? How are you going about solving these particular issues? And then we decided to formalize this into proper scholarly research because we thought that there was something there, and we had the opportunity, and perhaps many universities don't, the opportunity of listening to all of these voices. So we decided to formalize it into scholarly research, and we conducted semi-structured interviews with 9 students that we selected at random, and we were listening their concerns, we were listening their opinions and how they try to go about overcoming these challenges, particularly during the learning process. Once we collected all of the data, we ran a classic thematic analysis, trying to find common patterns amongst the data and trying to make it make sense, which is the next thing that Patience is going to tell us about.
So we developed 5 themes, the first one being language, participation, and challenges. And with this, as I said, or as Jesus has already pointed out, we have students from different countries, with China being the largest cohort. And this means language is not an easy thing. There are lots of language barriers there, and we need to understand how to help these students understand better and understand what public relations is. Public relations may be understood differently depending on where you come from, and so these are the things that we need to also point out. So our students do have language barriers there, but we do curb it with trying to get them to communicate in whichever way they are able to communicate. So the pressure and the burden that other students, home students, feel. So those are the challenges that we have, because the home students are able to communicate well in English, and so they find themselves having to compensate or to communicate, to share the opinions more in class, because the other students are not able to do that. So we try to encourage those who are not so strong in English to, work with the other students as well, so they get to learn the language and be more comfortable in, using English. So these are the real issues that we face. And then again, enhancing practical and industry relevant learning. It's important that our students are industry ready. So this is what we do through NESMA CIPR. We bring about practical work and more interactive seminars, as well as PR professionals, as well as incorporation of specific content, so that when they get into the workplace, it's not just about theory. They're already ready for practice. They've worked together, and we work with NGOs such as CRGP, which helps the students actually create real-life briefs, and this prepares them for the industry. And then again, we balance theory with practical learning. So theory is important, practice is important. So when you combine these, you need to know why you're doing what you're doing. So we give students that opportunity to understand, and we have a lot of students who are from the workplace and are now students. So they have that industry experience, and they've highlighted how this makes sense for them. They now understand why they're doing things the way they did them, because the theory provides that balance. And so it helps for them as well, interacting with students who have not yet have had the industry experience, to share with them their experiences as well. So it makes it easier for them to understand that. And then the value of self-directed learning and inclusive learning. It's important that we equip our students with confidence to be able to help understand how public relations works. And so we get them to be more interactive. So it's not just us giving them that information, but it's also them going out, researching and finding out how things are done. It equips them with that knowledge, because we don't want students who are just getting. They should also be learning. It's important that they know, and it gives them that self-confidence when they get into the workplace as well. And then lastly, the role of cross-cultural interactions in learning. This is very important. As I said, public relations is practiced differently in different countries. So we have these students who understand what public relations means in their countries, as well as us as the professionals here. We all practice public relations differently. And we bring that experience to our students for them to understand. And it helps them understand what it means, because they're going to be working not in the UK. They might be going to work back in China, in India, in Indonesia, and Colombia. So they need to understand how to do that. So the cross-cultural interactions that we bring and how they need to understand communication helps them, or public relations helps them know how to craft campaigns that will resonate with their target audiences. When you go to Africa and you're carrying out a campaign, the message will not be the same. The message that you craft for your target audience in Botswana will not be the same as the message you craft for someone in the UK. You need to understand who your target audience is and target that particular person. So cultural values mean a whole, it's very important for the people that you're dealing with. If you don't target well, or your message is not fully targeted well to the target audience, it's very difficult for you to penetrate and to have for your campaign to be successful. So you need to understand what that is. And then finally, in conclusion, the language barriers that I've already pointed out continue to present a challenge in communication and engagement. And one of the students from the UK says the big thing is the language barrier within lectures and seminars. So home students will be able to much more easily just say their thoughts. So home students find themselves carrying the communication within classes, and we try to pair them with other students so that they're able to share, students from other countries as well. And then the diversity of a multicultural cohort provides valuable perspectives and enhances the learning experience. It's important that these students bring their experiences from their country and share with the other students, so they are able to see how public relations, media and PR are practiced in different countries, and how they understand PR to be. And then students are generally satisfied with the delivery of the program. So lecturers, we as the lecturers from Media and PR, we use different case studies to communicate with our students. So it's not just Western-centric case studies that we use, and those are not the examples we only use. We try to incorporate all of the examples and to get the students themselves to bring those examples to class and use them as well, so that they are better able to understand how to practice PR when they get back to their countries. And some of the effective teaching techniques that we use is the multimodal content delivery. So we use different modes, videos, transcripts, and especially for those students who don't understand the videos, we ensure that there's transcripts so they're able to fully understand, and this helps the students. And we use, obviously, seminars as well. And during seminars, students get to interact with other students, and this ties into the peer learning as well. When we place them in different groups, they're able to share their thoughts and bring in case studies from their own countries as well. And then culturally responsive teaching. This is encouraging the case studies from the different countries as well and ensuring that they share those. So we incorporate case studies, not just from the UK, but from all the different regions that you saw Jesus pointing out. And it helps them understand better how public relations is practiced.
So to continue, one of the things that we do is to encourage personal context sharing. For example, in my strategies and management in PR module, I will, if I have a journalist who has practiced, then I'll make them share so that students understand from the perspective of a journalist how media relations should be like. What are the things they should expect? What are the things journalists appreciate? So we do that. And then we have students who have already practiced and are coming to learn the theory only. We let those students also share to ensure that current students understand the different contexts in which PR is practiced. And then one of the things you hear me say all the time is that there's no wrong answer. And so there are safe discussion spaces. If you disagree, it's fine. Just tell me why you disagree. It might make sense, yes, based on your context. And then there are these continuous feedback loops. So constantly, and that is why we carried out this research as well, to find out what students think, but we also give back to students feedback to know what is happening, what they can do better, etc., etc. I'll hand over finally to Jesus.
And the last few points on our list are practice-based learning. We try to give more room and time for practical workshops. We have reduced the number of hours that we dedicate to lectures. So in the past, we used to teach 2-hour lectures to students, and now we do 1-hour short lectures in many modules. So we have reduced dramatically the time of listening to a lecture teaching a specific topic, and we are giving more room to practical discussions and hands-on tasks in smaller groups. We have also tried to move away from traditional assessment, so we reduced the number of essays. We try not to have many essays, particularly to overcome challenges related to AI-generated text. We want to do more authentic assessment where the students can critically engage with a specific topic or a case study, give their opinion, like an informed opinion, based on what we covered in the module and their own critical thinking. Practical projects, we developed a new module. Anne-Marie was very, very good at helping us developing a new module, which we have as an alternative to a traditional dissertation. And students now have the option to work on a portfolio of content. So this is more oriented to content creation, and they receive a brief from a real-life client. They listened, and they have this interaction with the real-life client. They ask questions, they listen to their concerns, and they develop a portfolio of content to solve a specific issue or challenge they may be facing, particularly when it comes to marketing communications, crisis communications, or just social media content. And lastly, we try to include as many guest speakers and networking events as we can. We have our master class, or master classes, at least we try to host at least 2 master classes a year when we invite scholars from other universities. And like Paulina was mentioning at the beginning, we recently hosted Dr. Timothy Coombs, who is a very well-known scholar in crisis communications, and that was greatly received by the students. They learned a lot from that experience. And with that, that's how we try to overcome these challenges, and we're looking forward to publish our results in an academic journal very soon. Thank you.
Well, thank you guys very much. So now you've kind of heard a little bit about where we're from, heard a little bit about the type of students that we teach, and that will all build towards my final presentation for this section. But before we get to that, let's hear from Rob. So Dr. McKay is one of our music senior lecturers, and he's going to talk to you a little bit about his work, which involves ecology as well as music and some really, really creative production around that. So please help me welcome Rob to explain his work. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Kelly, and thanks for inviting me to be part of this delegation. And it's really wonderful to be here with you all today. So as Kelly says, I'm a senior lecturer in music. I'm a composer and sound artist. A lot of my work incorporates the sounds of different environments, and I'm really interested in the things that sound can tell us about an environment and perhaps changes that are occurring within it. So a lot of my work is very interdisciplinary. I work a lot with scientists and with other artists. In a minute, I'm going to be talking to you about my project following the flight of the monarchs. But before that, I thought because it's nice to kind of share a little bit more about the sounds of the Northeast. I've been involved with a couple of projects with young people in the town of Scarborough, which is about 2 hours drive south of Newcastle. And I was working with an organization called Invisible Dust that brings together artists and scientists to explore different environments. And the first of the 2 projects, actually, if we go to the next slide, the town of Scarborough, I'm sure you've all heard the Simon and Garfunkel version of Scarborough Fair, the traditional folk tune. It's actually Britain's first seaside resort as well. And it's where I had my first lecturing job. The University of Hull had a campus there, and I taught creative music technology. And if we go to the next slide, the first of the 2 projects in Scarborough, working with young people, was working with a coding club at Scarborough's library and working with kids aged 9 to 13. And the idea of the eCode project was to work with 3 different artists. I was the first of the 3 artists, and we were exploring the environment through different lenses, and mine was sound. So we went out on some field recording trips with the young people, really listening to the sounds of their environment and starting to really appreciate the things that are characterful of that particular place. And then we took those sounds, and they worked with creative code software to create sound compositions, their own creative responses. And then we also used Google Maps to create an online sound map that we could share so that anyone in the world can kind of get that sound portrait of Scarborough. Now, the next slide is a video, but we don't have time to play the whole thing. I think, if you go back a slide, oh no, we've missed it. Oh, it's not there anyway, so that's fine. So if we go back, yes, that's the next slide, sorry. So Sea Songs is the second of the 2 projects, and I was working with 6th form students, so this is sort of 16 to 18-year-olds. And again, the Wild Eye project aims to foster a greater understanding of the incredible wildlife found across the North Yorkshire coast through artworks and events. And we went on 3 recording sort of outings as part of that project. If we go to the next slide. The first of the 2, we went onto the beach, onto South Bay, and we took some hydrophones, which is special underwater microphones, and we were listening inside some of the rock pools. And on this wonderful sunny day, we can actually hear the sound of photosynthesis. We listened to the oxygen bubbles being released from seaweed. in these shallow pools. And then on 2 other trips, we went on a boat, and we were able to record the sounds of snapping shrimp, which are found all over the world. They have one oversized pincer, and they create a sort of vacuum by opening their pincers so fast, and then that bubble collapses, and as that does so, it releases a really powerful sound wave that can stun or even kill small fish. So that's how they kill their prey, with sound, basically. And it's really loud. In fact, I think in World War II, when submarines were listening, they thought it was potentially interference signal, but it actually, that's the first time we witnessed, humans witnessed the sound of snapping shrimp. We also have grey seals. I think Jonathan mentioned that in his talk, and we were able to listen to almost like howling wolves. And then on the last day, it was really thrilling to hear a pod of 3 bottlenose dolphins. So they were echolocating and communicating under the boat. So these particular instruments allow us into this kind of not exactly private world, but a sound world that we're not usually familiar with. So the whole idea was using sound as a way of connecting and appreciating the sounds and the environments and the worlds that these different organisms inhabit. That last slide there shows 2 sound maps that I made on using an app called Echoes, and it creates an augmented reality sound walk. So in Scarborough South Bay, as one using a smartphone, if you listen with earbuds, as you walk about a mile along that coast, you go through these different zones, and you'll hear the snapping shrimp, and then you'll hear the sounds of the grey seals, and then the bottlenose dolphins. And also, it was surprising to hear quite how much noise pollution there was as well. And because sound travels 3 times further, nearly up to 4 times further and faster in water than it does in air, you hear nothing above the water and put the hydrophones in, then you realize you're hearing a boat engine that's like half a mile away. And the water jets skis were just deafening under the water. So this is some of the things that these organisms are having to sort of work with. So I just wanted to kind of give a little overview of some of the sounds that you can hear in the Northeast. But moving on to the next slide, and then the one after that, we should be back to the monarch butterflies, which obviously is much more relevant to this continent. So this is a project I've been running since about 2015, and it connects communities, ecosystems, artists and scientists across the monarch butterfly migration routes. And if we go to the next slide, as they make this incredible 3,000-mile journey between Canada and Mexico every year, there's 4 generations. Generation 1 is born in Texas, then they fly to the north of the US, then Generation 2 is born, they fly to Canada. Generation 3 pretty much stays in Canada. And then it's Generation 4, which is often called the super generation, that around about the equinox in September start this journey all the way down to Mexico for overwintering. And they only take about 6 weeks to do it. These tiny creatures, they're incredibly resilient. And they end up in Mexico, and they actually stay there for 6 months. And they breed in around February. Then they make the journey north again to Texas. They lay their eggs, Generation 1 is born, and the whole cycle continues. And I was absolutely fascinated by these creatures. And if we go to the next slide, my journey with monarch butterflies actually began in 2015 when I was already visiting Morelia in Mexico and CIMAS, which is the Mexican Center for Music and Sonic Arts. I was giving a talk and a concert of my work there, and I just happened to be having a conversation with an ecologist colleague of mine, and he said, well, you're in Michoacan now, that's where the monarch butterfly is overwinter, and I did a bit of research online, and I became aware of the fact that because they swarm in millions, you can actually hear the sound of monarch butterfly wings. I need to record that sound. So I was lucky enough to go on a road trip, and I filmed and recorded the butterflies, and also met a number of Mexican artists, and I ended up collaborating with them to create this hide-like structure, which is a wooden structure, a bit like a hide in a forest where you would go to look out at birds. In this case, we're looking at monarch butterflies. So there's 4 video screens, and there's also 4 loudspeakers. And the sound has 3 layers to the installation. So layer 1 has the sounds of the environment, including the rushing of millions of tiny monarch butterfly wings. Then there's also a specially commissioned poem from Mexican poet Rolando Rodriguez in Spanish about the sort of scientific understandings that we have around the migrations, but from a very emotive perspective. Then also a musical layer, which is an improvisation of myself on flute, also collaborating with an American musician, David Blink. And yeah, we wove all of those things together. So the idea is that you kind of walk inside this box and you're kind of teleported to southern Mexico. And if we go to the next slide, you can see we also presented it in the Eden Project in Cornwall in the south of England, which is this sort of major sort of center with 2 geodesic domes that preserve these 2 different environments. And I think my most favorite presentation of the work was at the Shambhala Festival, where we did it outside in the English woodlands. So you're walking in the English woodlands and you walk inside this box and suddenly you're kind of teleported to Mexico. If we go to the next slide, you can see these are all the people that were involved with that project. And the next one after that as well, there's a few presentations of a kind of film version of that as well. Now, through being involved with this project, I became sort of very aware of the fact that the monarchs' numbers are declining quite dramatically, in fact, by up to 90% over the last 2 decades. And there are a number of factors. Some of those include industrial use of herbicides and pesticides, and also deforestation. And if we go to the next slide, we should see the word soundscape ecology. And the area of acoustic ecology is something I've been becoming so increasingly aware of, and is becoming more and more part of my own research over the last kind of 15 years or so. And the fact that we can actually understand the health of an ecosystem through sound. A lot of these projects use passive recorders where you might have long-term recording and you can listen to things like biodiversity and ecosystem dynamics. But I've also been working with an organization called SoundCamp, who specialized in high-quality live streaming of soundscapes. And one of the advantages of a live stream is if somebody is perhaps illegally logging a tree, you can monitor that in real time, work with a forest ranger, and they can go out and potentially stop that from happening there and then. It also is a wonderful tool for connecting people anywhere in the world with these environments. I think there's something very visceral about listening to somewhere in real time that's thousands of miles away. You feel so much closer to it. So if we go to the next slide, I worked with SoundCamp and I took out a Streambox, which is a little Raspberry Pi computer with 2 microphones inside a weatherproof housing, and we ended up using a solar setup. And we went to the Cerro Pelon Monarch Butterfly Reserve, which is a UNESCO monarch butterfly reserve in the state of Mexico. It's about 3 hours drive west of Mexico City. If we go to the next slide, we collaborated with butterflies and their people arborists. And this is a scheme that gives paid roles to people to be stewards of the forest. This is now a sort of protected area, but logging has been a sort of quite a major means of employment in that part of the world. So to make a shift to protecting the area, actually one of the guys in the photo used to be a logger, but now he's being paid to be a steward of and conserving the forest. So I was really interested in using sound to understand the behavior of the monarch butterflies. So I was talking about the fact that we can hear that rustling of their tiny wings. And their bodies are very temperature sensitive. They can only fly when their body reaches 25 degrees Celsius or above. So they need to have direct sunlight to be able to fly, to be able to drink water and nectar. This is linked to temperature and humidity. So if we go to the next slide, when I was talking to the late monarch butterfly specialist, Lincoln Brower, he was talking about this mass flight response of the overwintering butterflies. Could we, with the stream boxes, use sort of machine listening AI to tune into that sound of the wings so that we can look at the correlation between temperature and humidity and when the butterflies are flying. But also we can use the boxes to listen into other species, other bird species along the routes as well. So if we go to the next slide, hopefully, if you press it again, it will play. It's a little video. Yeah, so that is the incredible sight that we were greeted with at the Cerro Pelon Reserve. As you can see, there's just millions of these butterflies flying all around us, and I love the way that the sunlight shines through their wings. It's almost like stained glass. And I was recording this with a special microphone, an ambisonic microphone that records in 360 surround sound. And Jesus was talking about 360 video, and actually later we've come back to the reserves and we've been using 360 cameras. And the Great North Museum, right next to Newcastle University, has a small planetarium. So I'm in the process of making a 360 film for them around the butterflies. And again, this is using these kinds of immersive technologies to kind of give people a real sort of visceral sense of being in a place. If we go to the next slide, and there, this is the meadow that the butterflies were in. You can really, that idea of listening into the sounds of the wings to hear the butterfly's behavior, you really get a sense of that. If you press, it should play a sound file on there. And then press again. Next slide. So this is what the online sound, so the live streams are actually being streamed to an online sound map. This is a project that's been run by an organization called Locus Sonus. They are based at the art school in Aix-en-Provence in the south of France, and they collaborate with the University of Marseille. So this is an open source project. Anyone can live stream on this map. They even have a smartphone app that turns your mobile phone into a live streaming device. So I'm making this network of stream boxes. We've got now one in Mexico, one in Canada. I've got one in Virginia that's still waiting to be installed. And the latest one was last year. I was in Houston and then went over to San Antonio, and there's one installed in Phil Hardberger Park there. And the idea is that we can connect these different locations and listen to the monarchs as they migrate and to the sort of biodiversity of those environments. If we go to the next slide, that's our elated faces when we did actually see get a point in the mountain where there was signal. And if we go again, because see, that is it on the map, just to prove it. If we go to the next slide, that's the solar setup. So we had to, it's completely off grid. It's working with a 3G network, mobile phone network, and it's running off solar power. If we go to the next slide, that's what it looks like for the view from the mountain. And the next one, again, if you press down one more, you should hear the sounds. This is the sound. This list here is the 10 different species that ornithologists at UMass Go to the next slide. another thing that we've been doing as the collection of artists has been improvising in the reserves, listening and responding and sort of co-creating music with the other organisms that are in the space and listening to the sound of the wind, etc. So if you press the next slide, we should see David starting to play the handpan. So this was in the morning when all the monarch butterflies were coming down to drink dew from the grass, and I love the sound of his handpan. Is quite reminiscent of the sort of fluttering sound of the wings as well. If we go to the next slide, and again press one more down, we should start hearing some flute and trumpet. The other thing is this amazing This is the other end of the migration cycle. So this is the second Streambox that I installed at Point Pelee National Park in Canada. And this is this knife edge peninsula that cuts into Lake Erie. And it's a major migration spot for monarch butterflies, but birds and other insects, actually. Apparently there's migratory bats, there's migratory wasps and bees. So if we go to the next slide, this is kind of the network of Streamboxes that we're kind of setting up at the moment. And the next slide again, there's the potential to work with citizen scientists to listen into those boxes and use apps like Cornell's Merlin app, which is a bird ID app, which uses AI for that, and log those using databases like iNaturalist. And if we go to the next slide, I actually made a radio program about the monarch migration for BBC Radio 3. And it's basically a sonic road trip. I talked to conservationists and monarch butterfly specialists from, in Canada, in Point Pelee, then down to the Barrier Islands in Virginia, and then down to Mexico. And it weaves together our improvisations, musical improvisations in the reserves as well, and the poetry. So it sort of weaves all of these things together. So it's still online as well on BBC Sound. So if you Google Flight of the Monarch BBC Radio 3, you've got a half-hour program. And it's best if you listen on headphones as well, because some of those ambisonic recordings that I say, those surround sound ones, you can kind of create a sort of binaural image, which even with headphones, just two ears, you still get a sense of this immersive surround sound. And then just to sort of nearly wrap up, during lockdown in the UK, when it was difficult for people to collaborate together as musicians, I was able to play with the other musicians and interact with the different environments via Zoom and the online sound map. So that's me playing flute in Leeds, where I live, then David Blink playing the handpan and trumpet and other percussion in California, then Rolando reciting poetry in Mexico, and his daughter Jessica Rodriguez, who's a media artist, has just completed a PhD at McMaster University in Canada, was doing live VJing from footage of the reserves as well. And then alongside that, I was live streaming the sounds from the different stream boxes, and we were kind of interacting with those as well. So we're connecting all these different places and people and organisms. And if we go to the next slide, this kind of idea of listening and responding is very much influenced by Teresa Connor's idea of ecological performativity, which is this non-anthropocentric model characterized as a dance of agency between living and non-living systems, human and non-human actors, and the complexity within which they are entangled. And so in this performance, If we go to the next slide, these sort of multiple spatialities and temporalities are all layered together. And this idea of sort of teleporting people, I've come up with this sort of long word, telephenomenology, this idea of sense of place, sense of being in a place, but connected to somewhere a long way away, but kind of getting a sense, a sort of embodied sense of what it's like to being there, and hopefully helping people to have a greater sense of connectedness and empathy with different organisms. If we go to the next slide, those are the different locations that we were all networked up from. And then the next one along, the latest collaboration has been with a dancer choreographer, Patti Solorzano, who bases her movements on scientific observations of the monarch butterfly's movements. And we, again, were improvising and performing outside in the reserves. And so if we go to the next slide, this is an unfortunate monarch butterfly that kind of got stranded out overnight in the cold. But hopefully, if we go to the next slide with Team Monarca, we can make a difference with this. And the final slide is just a little QR code that people can use if you want to give any feedback, if there's anything you find that you've learned from the presentation, or if you'd like to be involved. There's a very short online form with about 4 questions on it. So thank you very much for listening. It's lovely to be able to share, and I'm looking forward to hearing the presentations from Nichols as well. Thank you.
Well done. Yes, very well done. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. McKay. We really appreciate that. Okay, so now we're kind of building. You've heard where we're from, the kind of students that we teach, a little bit about the work that we do as a department. So this would be not just the media, but kind of the School of Arts and Culture. And I've been on Dr. McKay to do something with the sounds of the bayou. Can you guys see that happening? Huh? I hear, like, if you could bury some microphones. I don't know. I mean, I'm just saying. Maybe Lacey with the Coastal Center. Maybe we want to do some collaborations. Our brains don't work like you, Dr. McKay, and I think it would be really beneficial to the South to collaborate in some way, because I find it super interesting. Okay, moving on. I'm the last presentation from Newcastle Uni. So I might shorten it up a little bit because I think we've gone over, but that's all right. We're going to tie everything together now. So you can go ahead and play it. That's fine. So we're going to talk a little bit about this global partnership. For the past few years, Dr. Stewart and I have worked together to form a global partnership between Nicholls State University and Newcastle University. We've taken this partnership into the classroom, as well as out and into the field. So when Laurie came over to visit us, she saw and walked on those contaminated beaches that Jonathan and Anne-Marie were talking about. They no longer look like that, right? They have spent years and years trying to clean this up, but you got to go out and see some of our challenges in terms of conservation and some of the restoration challenges that we face, and we're doing the same. So the partnership is in the classroom, it's between academics, and we hope that it extends to other organizations. Last year, Nicholls came over. They delivered a final presentation with our students. This is so dynamic, and it's unlike anything I've ever been a part of before. So imagine a final presentation, and people come from halfway across the world and deliver it with you. And so they worked in tandem with their American consultants, and they got to deliver these incredible final presentations to clients. So it was just a really great experience to be a part of. And then after that, they all went up to the Edinburgh Royal Gallery, and they were able to present boards at, to Edinburgh to a group of about 150 people. At the Royal Botanic Gardens in Edinburgh, and they also kind of hosted the party. You guys were the hosts of honor, right, James? James even got an award, the Golden Gorilla Award, for his work in conservation, helping to take some of what they were doing here in South Louisiana. This year, we had a smaller exchange, but it was still really important. Laurie, Nikki Boudreau, and a couple of their students came over and gave a presentation to a group of academics and students about the wetland restoration project that they're involved with. So they got to educate our side about the kind of challenges that you guys face. And doing these types of exchanges are really important because now all of our students want to know about the wetlands in Louisiana. And I'm sure all of your students wanted to know all about the Coastal Grassland Reconnects project and everything that you learned about. So next one, please. So in doing this, we decided instead of it being Newcastle University, Nichols University, let's all be part of something together. And let's let it be kind of this transnational experience. So we formed Students Against Species Extinction, and I'm a mentor, James is, Laurie is, and then our students are participants within this. We take on projects and challenges. Right now we're working with the Cross River Gorilla Project, Coastal Grassland Reconnect Project, and Louisiana Wetland Projects. And we want to build and grow on this. So we work on these globally, but we also work on them together, and then they usually culminate in some kind of an event, and we all kind of contribute to this. So it spans 3 different continents. We work with the University of Edinburgh as well, and we're taking on the University of Bamenda in Africa to really gain these perspectives. It just enriches our students, it enriches their university experience, and it also helps us as academics to improve our scholarship. I think our students can probably say this better than we can. There's a little video here, and I'm hoping that it's going to work. Oh, no. That's okay. If it doesn't, we'll just talk you through it. Okay. So basically, our students put a presentation together where they explained who they were, and kind of you got this feel for how they were working across the different continents. And they don't just walk across the different continents, they work interdisciplinarily as well. So you have the Mako students here, our media team, as well as law students from the University of Newcastle, and biology students, marine biology students, all working together to tackle a real-world conservation issue. The issue that I'll use as an example that you would have seen in that video was the Cross River Gorilla Project. It is a critically endangered Cross River gorilla, which is in Cameroon, and they kind of came to us and said, can you guys help? A lot of these NGOs, nonprofit organizations, they don't have the money and the funds or the volunteers and the know-how to be able to get some programs off the ground. So they wanted a membership program, and our students came up with a membership program that they called the GROW campaign. And it was absolutely brilliant. They raised enough money to be able to buy tons of camera traps that they could then put in the rainforest in the Lebialum Highlands in Cameroon to give and feed information back to the scientists to help in the preservation and the protection of these gorillas. So it all worked together. The media did all the campaign around it. Law found legislation issues that we could pick up and kind of push legislation on kind of giving us more power within the rainforest. And obviously the biology and the marine biology were really key in us understanding how everything works together. So everybody worked together, and they were incredibly successful in their campaign. The students also gain, clearly, lots of experience. So when they leave, they get experience through modules, and we try, like we said, and you guys do as well. I've seen your program, it's amazing, to incorporate as much outside and corporate experience as possible. But doing a project and running it in this way and collaborating internationally has been so key, and I think Laurie agrees for your students. It's just been one of these amazing projects. In that, if you want to put the next one, thank you so much. We were recognized by the United Nations to be a partner with the student program. So this opens more doors for our students, more doors in terms of who do you want to work with, but also it offers platforms for the organizations that we feature. So if we worked with the Louisiana Wetland Restoration Project of any description, they would have a really big platform. And this is what we're really hoping to do. And we will be guided by James and Lorraine and your team in terms of what we do with this, but this is the kind of direction we're hoping to move into. So there was another video here. I don't know why it's not green, but that's okay. We'll talk you through it. And this was about, it was Alex and Michael who took Laurie and I to the Coastal Grassland Reconnect project. And it just shows where they were, what they've done now, and how they've regenerated and rebuilt and restored this area. They also do a lot of cool things with the sites and the heritage. And like I said before, they're kind of ahead of us. Their coal mines were shut down years ago in the 80s. We're not quite there yet with the oil field industry, but some point in the future we will be. And so figuring out ways to preserve this is super important. I'm originally from Grand Caillou, grew up in Berg, Louisiana, and both of my grandfathers worked for Texaco, like I'm sure many of you here. I'm really proud of that. I understand that the oil field industry is probably responsible for a lot of the damage, but also they're responsible for my education. And, you know, the industry provided good livelihoods. And I'm really proud of that heritage as well. So my grandfather did 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, which again, I'm sure a lot of you can relate to. And when he was off, he was a shrimper. So on one hand, he's working for a company who is, you know, not doing the best things in terms of preservation for the wetlands, but then on the other, he lives by it, and it's something. And again, this is a story that we heard from some of your students whose grandfathers did oyster beds and things, and that was great for our students to hear as well. So I think it's about looking at ways to preserve the culture and heritage, tell these stories, and tell these stories on a global platform, so that people can identify with it. And you've seen there's a lot of synergy between these industrial pasts. And then when we move forward, look for ways to highlight the issues in a way that people want to be involved with. So not so much saying, oh, that's such a shame that we did it this way, but that's the way it was done. We're proud of it. And let's move forward with a different kind of outlook and initiative while still being proud of our heritage and our past. So this is something I'd like to work with you guys with. And if you know, open for suggestions, the SA is a volunteer group of people, and we just take on initiatives and offer help as we can. So that's what we're looking to do. Just to give you an idea of some of the types of events that we have, this is what Laurie and her team did in a day when they were there. I mean, I really packed it in. So when they arrived, you poor thing, I'm sorry, we took them to the Dove Marine Laboratories, which is a lab that we have for our marine biologists and scientists on the beach. And they're doing some really amazing things. And we heard about kelp forest preservation. We heard about some really exciting things that they do with over algae blooms, where they harvest it and make paints and then use for fertilizers on farms. So agriculturally, that was really interesting. I'd like to get those guys over here at some point, and vice versa, so that we can exchange all of this really cool information and work. Then your students presented to us about the wetland restoration and generation restoration. Then they came to some of our seminars. We then had an event at night, which Laurie's students helped and James's students helped to put on. And it was just completely a full day where they were very much immersed into the things that our students do, but also into the world of Newcastle University and all of the research that we have going on. And then over here, we've got kind of the things that we're doing now with you guys. So this is just a little idea of what the SAC does and what we kind of plan for each other and these collaborative partnerships. So what do our students say? Obviously, they love being a part of this. You can see here, that's Bethany, one of your old students, and she's presenting with 3 of our students. And they did this seamlessly. I mean, it's hard for us, and we work together all the time to present together. How they managed this through Zooms and all that, it was amazing. And then to do it in person with a panel of industry leaders watching them, it was just really and truly moving. So they all wrote to us afterwards and said this was an amazing opportunity, that we saw global collaboration materialize in front of our face, right? The center picture is the biodiversity ball. We had one of our students from Edinburgh University. She drew a plant from the Lebialum Highlands, which is a region we were trying to highlight. And we used that sketch for the invitation for the ball. And the students all got to, there's the students at the ball on the right-hand side, and that's a kind of mix of some of our students and some of the Nichols students. And they got all dressed up, and they had boards that they presented on the material that they had been working on. And then they got to present them at the ball. So we were really proud of them, and they had a nice time, and of course they enjoyed themselves afterwards. There was dance and all the rest. But they said it was refreshing to work on something practical that contributes to a real cause. So they're super proud of the work that they do. And a lot of the feedback that we got was that the entirety of their first interviews was talking about the work with the SSE. And they felt like it really contributed to them getting their very first jobs, you know, this kind of global partnership and the things that we do. Okay, next slide. I don't know where I am with that, I think. Okay, so in terms of strengthening impacts, what do we want to do next? And looking forward, we really want to work with the Louisiana wetlands. And you guys tell us, you know, what we could focus on, what we'd like to do. We'd like to draw global attention to the urgent challenges that are facing South Louisiana. And I know it seems kind of funny, you know, to be living in the northeast of England and be worried about the Louisiana wetlands, but having lived in both places, this is a really special part of the world. You have some very unique cultural points. You have an incredibly unique heritage. I don't need to tell you all about that. But the rest of the world should hear about this. And I think by getting our students involved and working together with your students, we can have a really, really big impact. So I'll kind of throw it to you now to think about, what could we work on? What would you like to see in your communities? If you play the very last one, please do keep in touch, and let's keep the conversation kind of driving forward. You know, if you saw something today and you think, wow, that would be really cool, like we could listen to crabs going into their, you know, or whatever it is, let us know, and we will make that happen. So thank you so much for your time from us today. If you have any questions, I think we've got a few minutes for a bit of a Q&A to anybody here on the panel, and we'd love to field those questions for you. Does anybody have any questions before we take a break? Anybody? Yes, yes. Sure. Yes.
In this region and really across the ecology, there's an understanding that when frogs fight, we begin to die. You know that you so I believe that animals are terrifically just our environment.
Yeah.
I heard so much about conservation, heard so much about rebuilding and reunification.
Mm-hmm.
But there is one burning thing in my mind that I cannot let go of, and that is with the slide.
Mm-hmm.
I know one of the things that we're always talking about with conservation is what can we do with the waste?
Right.
So sugarcane, the bagasse product,
Mm-hmm.
they're putting it in inflation, moving shingles, ceiling tiles. And so the slag is really bothering me. And so thinking about that as like an off-put or core type material.
Yeah.
Was any of that slag able to be used to strengthen the foundation on which all of the new buildings were built? Or did it just have to be displaced somewhere underground?
The majority of what's displaced, this is where one of this area, I understand that a proportion is used in building materials and construction, so there's a proportion of that. But it kind of, to bring these full circle, particularly in the towns where I live, are very small, very, very small town, we still have one of the last remnants of sea coals. So this, the coal that was dumped out into the sea from centuries is still getting washed up. So sometimes, like the private conditions or whatever, when I live on seafront, you can see the beach would be flat next door, and trucks would come down. Hartlepool is one of the only places in England where you have licensed trucks come down. You see very, very firm men with their, with their shovels all day, shoveling it off, and really like the sound of it. It's still a livelihood for those people. It's still protected. And it can't be protected, but it's not important. Social uses providing a providing a livelihood. It's a very famous Greenland bar. John McCullough is a very famous British photographer. He did a lot of photographs of the seafood. But yeah, you would think that the new material, I think a lot of it went into landfill, and a lot of it, some of it has gone into other materials as well. I know that Mason, one of the things we heard last morning, he talking about using Louisiana corals to build some of the
Marsh.
structures.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing, so using
part of it is some of the actual coastline is compressed slag. So when Laurie and I went, they were saying from this, it was about 200 feet, wasn't it? That was extended, and it was just, tons and tons of compressed slag. And you could see on Blast Beach, you could see a shelf. So even when you got up to the shoreline, there would be shelves of the slag still there that you could see. And it's kind of got sand on it, and it's covered now. It looks all right, but a lot of it has just compressed itself onto around the shoreline, It built it out. Yeah. Yes. No. But it was aside from Chernobyl, it was the most toxic site in Europe at the time. So just to give you an example of, we've got problems here too in South Louisiana, but and we're talking about, they had pools of red that would steam up from the iron oxides. It was severely toxic. Okay. So they've done an amazing job over the past 30 years. I'm going to send our presentation to James, and maybe we can make it on a board, because there was a video of mine in there that talked about this. And it was part of this Grassland Reconnect project. And we had Michael and Alex talking about this area, what's done, what happened and what's being done. And so I think that would help you with a little bit of context. Yeah. But thank you so much. Yes. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Sure, yeah. Yes. Yeah. Sorry. Yes, sir. You have a question. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Great. Thank you so much. Any other questions? Yeah. Yeah. That's great. Thank you. Any other questions from anyone? Yes, yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I think the two can work hand in hand, can't they? I mean, I think the people who, you know, most of my first cousins still go offshore 2 weeks and come back on, and they love and they fish and they love the coast. So I think you can work together. I mean, they want to protect it as well, you know, but also need to feed their families and rely on the income and the industry that it provides. So although it is a delicate balance, I think, you know, we need to find solutions, and Nichols will know a lot more about this in terms of weaning us off of fossil fuels and what direction that looks like and how that looks. But I think they can work together, because you can obviously love the land and want to restore it and protect it and still work offshore, you know, like my grandfathers did. Anybody else? Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I know, and I think having campaigns around the heritage are important, because then if you elevate these stories, you know, a lot of you have probably gone to war museums and you've seen an individual story about a pilot, what happened and all the rest. We could do these kinds of things with the men who work offshore, you know, and spent 50 years of their lives doing so, and then showing that when they're on their downtime, they're in the oyster beds or they're shrimping or whatever the case is. You can also look at case studies like we have for other industry that no longer exists, but how have they made peace with this and what have they done? So I think looking outside, you know, to look at the northeast of England, and there'll be other areas where they were heavily reliant. I mean, what happened to the northeast? I mean, can you imagine? It just one day in the 80s, the mines are shut, you know, and that's just, that's that. So I think this whole area would have suffered so greatly, just like the northeast of England did. It was awful for them, you know, and it took them absolutely decades to rebuild from that. So we're going to be doing it a little more gently, you know, but we do have to start thinking about these things. And so I think by elevating these stories, being proud, taking ownership of this, I think it's a way that we can kind of reconcile with these two parts. And then hopefully we can show people, because I think at the end of the day, it's human interest, right? People are really interested in people's stories and human interest stories. So the people who might not be on board with this, they will be on board with families being able to provide for their children to then be able to go to uni for the very first time, right? They get that, right? So I don't think anybody wants to take those kinds of things away. And so I think James, yeah, absolutely. Uh-huh. Yes. Yes. Well, I think one of the, in terms of higher education for the UK, it's still one of our major, it's one of the big USPs for the UK. You know, when you think of the UK, you think of, well, first you think of Harry Potter, probably, but then you think of Hogwarts and you think of education, right? Cambridge, Oxford. We have a long-standing tradition with higher education. So, you know, it's a really important industry for the United Kingdom, and I think probably the U.S. feel the same. Certainly Nichols would feel the same. You know, we're certainly not politicians, but I think, yeah, go ahead, Jonathan, have a go.
We all
And in the UK, an MA in certain in certain disciplines is a year. So we do a really intense one-year course, and it's 3 terms, and you've got your MA afterwards. So by doing kind of looking at how you offer programs, it can kind of be more enticing, and you can compensate for this global decline in the world market. Well, thank you so much. Yes, yes. That's great. Great. Well, I think that, oh, sorry, uh-huh. Well, thank you guys so much. And we're eating into the Nichols time. I'm very mindful of that. So I think we'll take a little break. James, is that correct? Yes? Right. Okay, thank you. Terrific. Okay. Okay, sounds great. Thank you.
Go ahead. You just typed in a minute ago, 5 minutes left for people online.
5 minutes, 5 minutes. That's what our viewers are. They will call it borderline. Well, me too. Well, my place got our leaders, not my place. My place is in Toronto. That's home. It's always gonna be home. And, I mean, I drive, I see, I see me, I see him. You know, so it's always home. That is my place. It doesn't feel, nothing wrong, but.
Now, is somebody gonna start us off, or we just stand up?
All right, if we could all come back in, if you're ready to hear from our panelists from, that's all right, I mean, I'm not needing to be recorded, from our region. If anyone else in the hall would like to come back in, you are invited, welcomed. Are you okay now? That's okay. I'll fill time. Oh, that's fine. So we thoroughly enjoyed that first session of information from the cultural and regional environmental aspects of where you're from, which is so cool to us as we, you know, try to elevate and look to our culture and heritage as well as the way it intersects with environmental concerns. And then we really found it interesting, especially people that teach these things. And I think that some of the questions like Dr. Keller had about how do we reach these other groups, and then I think Dr. LaFleur also said that, you know, people come in from other places and don't seem to understand that ecological concerns can also actually be married to cultural heritage and pride, and that it takes you guys, us, we're that glue that joins those two together, that bridges the gap to help us understand the pieces of science and the pieces of heritage, and brings everybody in, and helps everybody understand and speak the same language. Something that we can all, like those common themes, universal themes that we can all connect to. And so I think that each piece of that, and then of course, you know, being able to immerse yourself in places that we hear of all these different ecological concerns in places, and I will speak from our experience in your area, since that's what you came to talk about. I mean, you could have told me the story about the slag, and I ran over to show Dr. Keller the picture of our students sitting on that ledge that we had no idea was slag. I mean, we would have never known with this thin veneer of it's pretty. We would never know the history of it. And so I would have never, and hearing and seeing how far out it went and what it did to the sea life and what it did to other things, we would have never. I had 20-year-olds who, yeah, they care-ish more about their phone, but in that moment, they went, wow, this is beautiful and insane, and look what we're doing. It suddenly made it so real. And so being able to bring those experiences, not everybody can hop on a plane. I mean, this Nancy Sanderson Mathern Global Institute for us has given some students from South Louisiana who a lot of our students are first generation students. Some of them had never been on an airplane before who were able to go that first year. So, I mean, this is an amazing opportunity, but a lot of people don't have that chance. So to be able to bring that to people in a way that you really makes you feel like you're in it, I mean, that just, I mean, it gives me shivers, or the frisson, as people down here like to say. I'm not from here, so I butchered that every bit. But, yeah, that. I needed to have asked. So anyway, I thought all of those presentations just were so impactful and things that we can all use. So I'm looking forward to having our guest speakers from our area and the expertise that comes only from the Bayou. And again, being somebody not from here, I can tell you that this, I'm not saying it from a biased perspective because I didn't grow up here. I'm an Air Force brat from everywhere who settled in Chattanooga, Tennessee. So I can tell you from a non-biased perspective, this is a cool place. Now, it is hot and it is humid, and if you could remove that part, but then I think everybody would live here. You gotta have some reason why everybody isn't gonna live here. So, I don't know if you've been to Canada, but their insects are the size of you. So, I mean, I don't know the insects. That's true, that's true. But this place is super unique. You're supposed to keep that to yourselves until we've lured them here.
I'm sorry, I gotta go to the tree.
That's right, at least you're gonna get the honest truth. All right, are we, okay. Are you all in order of speaking? Oh, you're so good.
Probably are.
Yeah, but you self-ordered. That was so handy.
Well, another thing that came up from what y'all were talking about y'all's situation in Newcastle is, it seems to me that the similar story is that there's so much money that was made on the coast, and same on our coast. There's so much wealth that's coming from it, and then when you turn around and try to clean it up, it's kind of hard. It's kind of hard to find somewhere for that wealth to be invested back in there. It's like, it's a head scratcher, right?
Started my career working at the Guggenheim in New York, and around that time, they were building the Bilbao Museum in Bilbao, Spain. This was a massively industrious part of Spain. Nobody ever went to this part of Spain, right? And until the Guggenheim partnered with one of the best architects in the world, Frank Gehry, and built this incredible building, filled it with some beautiful contemporary art, and now you can't turn it back to tourism people. Do you know what I mean? So sometimes it takes thinking outside of what we can do. It would be great if we had some kind of incredible building like down in Toby where people went to, and it held beautiful works of art. Or, I don't know, we can think differently. Looking at other places and thinking, you know, the building could be an engineering feat. It could be this line, something really out there and spectacular. And then we show off all the amazing things that we do in Sacramento. So, you know, the Bilbao effect, looking at that and thinking, what could we do here? How could we get tourism down here? Just keep that tourism. The roads would be better, all the other things fall on. So there's cases around the world we can start looking at.
Okay. I think we are now set up enough that we can continue. That was a nice little filler. I enjoyed it. All right, so we're going to start with Dr. Gary LaFleur, and he is going to, I honestly don't know your topic.
Yep, okay. Okay, I'm going to give the 10-minute version so we can keep online here. And my name is Gary LaFleur, and I'm going to be talking about the Center for Bayou Studies. Savannah, are you the clicker for me? So the Center for Bayou Studies was started at Nichols, still kind of recently, but really it was 10 years ago. And it was the brainchild of Dr. John Doucet. I'm ready for you. Yep. And, you know, I am not necessarily a public relations person or a PR person or a Mako person. I do biology, and so I'm interested in fish eggs. I also, that's helped me be interested in the whole ecology of things. That's my colleague, Balaji Ramachandran, who's in the room. And once I started studying fish and frogs, it also made me interested in the whole system. So what I also do is I work with Balaji. We use unmanned aerial vehicles to survey marsh, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But that's where I come from. Next slide. But I also wanted to introduce you to this idea called the Bayou Studies. And the Center for Bayou Studies is not just interested in what I'm interested in, biology. We're interested in the hydrology and the chemistry and the biology and the ecology of this situation, of this beautiful geography. But we're also interested in the people that colonized this area and developed a relationship with this estuary. And, you know, that happened when the Europeans got here, but it also happened 1,000 years before that when the indigenous people were here. So we're interested in how people are connected to the environment. That's what we do at Bayou Studies. All right, Savannah. Here's an example of what we're interested in at the Center for Bayou Studies. This is a piece by Dottie Ratliff that shows something that we were just recently talking about in the room. In Cocodrie, there's the flare. The flare is something that you find in a refinery. That's where extra gas is burnt off. And in some places, environmentalists would maybe not want to fish by the flare. But in Cocodrie, you make the best out of what you have. And Cocodrie is known for a spot where a whole bunch of people would go fishing by the flare because that gave them light and they could fish at night. And that's done by Dottie Ratliff. So at the Center for Bayou Studies, we're interested in that story. We're interested in the art by Dottie Ratliff. And we're interested in different examples of how people are connected to the coast here in Louisiana. Next slide. Now, some of the science that I'm doing is also part of this estuary system. I'm interested in flotant marsh, and we're looking at this right now. Flotant, raise your hand if you've ever stood on flotant. It's kind of an uncommon term to some people. Yeah, well, that's what it is. Flotant is a floating marsh, which is weird. It's thick enough to usually carry your weight, but it feels like you're on a waterbed. And it's a unique kind of marsh that you find in a place where there's a big coast like ours. Like in Florida, there's not much flotant marsh. In Texas, there's not much flotant marsh. But we have an expansive marsh in Louisiana, and so we have this flotant. Next slide. And so we just got money, next slide, to study the flotant marsh, and we're looking at it in 3 different parts. Now, these are places that I want my students to know the culture of these spots as well as the flotant marsh at these spots. We're looking at Lake Decad, Lake Buff, and Lake des Almonds, kind of in the north of the estuary and the south of the estuary. Next slide. This is what flotant sort of looks like when you're there. It's full of bull tongue. Bull tongue makes these beautiful flowers. You can stand on that, and one way to survey it is like what Danny Woods is doing in this picture. That's the old conventional way to survey flotant marsh, but we're doing it in different ways. Next slide. With Balaji Ramachandran's help, we look at flotant through an aerial survey. And when we do that, it's not like your little niece or nephew running a little DJI drone. Instead, this is a programmed drone that flies these transects kind of like a lawnmower. It flies the whole piece of the marsh. Next slide. And we're doing this with 2 different tools. One tool is a hyperspectral sensor that takes an image of the marsh at many different wavelengths. And so really we're getting colors of the marsh that our eyes don't even see. And the next slide. We're also doing this with a LiDAR sensor. Now, a LiDAR sensor isn't going for color, but it's going for topography. Next slide. And so the kind of thing that we're getting with Balaji Ramachandran's group is we're getting images of flotant marsh that can look like this. This is a 3D point cloud that shows us where there's water, where there's high marsh, also in kind of green, where there's low marsh. And what we're interested in is little tear points. I can see one little yellow line on the right-hand side. This little spot right here, where this might be a little weak point in the floton. So we're interested in being able to predict if a floton is going to break apart or not. That's one of the things we're doing with Bayou Studies faculty and students. Now, I'm also interested in the animals. This is one of the things that I do with students every spring. We do frog call surveys, and I'm interested in the frogs, but what I'm really interested in is bringing students to marshes and wetlands that they've never been to, even though they grew up in Thibodaux. A lot of students that I bring out to listen to frog calls at night, they've never been out in a swamp at night. They never had to. They never did it for a class. It's a beautiful experience. Talk about the stars, show them the constellations, and then they start telling frogs apart. It's a beautiful way to kind of do some science, some public science, but it also has an important role with the student. Okay, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. I'm going to go to the last thing one more time. Keep going one more time. I'm going to tell you all this one story about something that's important to me. This is the Chauvin Sculpture Garden. I'm also working at the Chauvin Sculpture Garden as part of Bayou Studies. And the Chauvin Sculpture Garden, next slide, got started by this guy that's in these slides, Kenny Hill. He was an outsider. He was not trained in art, but he created this beautiful folk art masterpiece called the Chauvin Sculpture Garden. In 2000, the year 2000, he walked away from it. And people in the area said, what are we going to do? He didn't own that land. He didn't have permission to make those sculptures. We invited Kohler Foundation. That's Kohler that makes sinks and bathtubs. They came and looked at this and they said, yeah, we are going to help y'all rescue this, because that's what they do on the side. They rescue folk art sites. They bought the land. They valued all the pieces. They did some improvements, and then they gave it to Nichols and said, you now have to take care of it. We're going to give this to you. Of course, we're going to make some tax money on this, but we're going to give this to you. You have to cut the grass and integrate it into your program. Next slide. And so we've been doing that ever since. The guys who helped set it up are shown in that picture right there. That's Greg Elliott, Dennis Saporsky, and Kimberly Arp. Then we went back to them when something bad happened. Next slide. The thing that was bad that happened was in 2021, we got hit by this hurricane, Hurricane Ida. And Hurricane Ida came right up this area, and it hit Chauvin on the way. It also hit Port Fourchon and Grand Isle and Cutoff and a lot of places that are dear to us. Next slide. But at the garden, it did this kind of damage. Water came in the garden, trees went down. Next slide. And sculptures were also hurt. This is Jesus. Fell down. The White Knight, that's the thing on the right, fell down. Some big columns fell down. Some of these angels that were 30 feet up kind of were slanting over. Next slide. And so we got a group of people to help take care of this. We gathered up the parts and the pieces so that we could put them back together. Next slide. And the team that we picked 20 years later was the same guys who did the work in the first place. That's Kimberly and Greg and Dennis Saporsky, and now the young guy on the right, that's me. We started working on this in 2 years after the hurricane. Next slide. And things started looking better. Before the White Knight had fallen down, Greg Elliott more or less did surgery on these. It means it looks bad at first. He had to cut off their legs and then put them back together. But afterwards, this year, the White Knight is standing again. Next slide. Jesus was down on the ground. Now Jesus is standing up. That makes everybody in the community feel better. This is Greg Elliott doing his cement work. Next slide. Just this year, we put scaffolding all around the lighthouse to make sure that we could get all the way up to the very top where the eagle was. We got the eagle back on there straight. The little girl was in the bayou. We got her back in her seat. Next slide. And the last thing that we're doing to strengthen this, and this came from Greg Elliott, is now, before a storm, we tie all these tall structures down, and this was done just this week. So hurricane season is coming. Now our tall structures are prepared for a storm, and I don't think they'll ever get damaged again. So I'll tell you all about two important things that we're doing. We're doing some science at the Center for Bayou Studies, and we're doing some art. Now the trick is, I bring students to see the Chauvin Sculpture Garden, because I want them to also see the little town of Chauvin, which is still a traditional fishing town. And when we're looking at sculptures, a big shrimp boat passes by, and there's a lesson there. And so kind of like it's a bait and switch. They work at the garden, but they also learn about Chauvin. And so that's one of the things that we're trying to do at the Center for Bayou Studies. And I think I'm going to end it there. Thanks, y'all. I'll take questions later.
I'm Wendell Curall from Cutoff. 7 generations here in Louisiana. Most of my ancestors came from either France or Acadia. And that 7 generations, we were the first generation to learn English before French. When I was a kid, all the adults, the whole community spoke French. And it was only World War II made a difference. Actually, when you went to school in 1919, they passed a law that if you were on the school ground, you couldn't speak French. You would be punished if you spoke French. And yet, that didn't stop the language. World War II, we got to say, okay, maybe we want to be a little bit more American. And when our parents spoke to us, they spoke to us in English. And when my grandparents spoke to us, it was in French. And we would speak back in English, and they understood enough of it. And because of that, I learned enough French, and I've made about 6 journeys to Paris and the surrounding friend. I was adopted by a French family. And so, yeah, since 1985, I've been going back and forth, made about 6 trips. It's really good. But biggest thing for me is where I live. 19 years, and I'm over here at Nichols, and the Aquatic Biology Club has a meeting. And 1973 was a very high river year, one of the highest ever, tremendous flooding up and down the Mississippi River. So the geologist tells us that all of the land in coastal Louisiana was brought here from somewhere else. And I said, how could I be living here my entire life and not know that? Because everything good and everything bad and everything to keep things the way they are and the way to fix is to understand that every bit of soil that's under here came from anywhere between western New York, Canada to Montana. The floodplain of the Mississippi River, anywhere a drop of water falls in there, could end up right here going in the Mississippi River and pump from there into Bayou Lafourche and end up in my cup of coffee. That's how connected it all is. But again, I say we live in the United States, but we live on the reunited States. In a lot of ways, we have the best of it. And you get to the other part of Lake Pontchartrain, when you go from New Orleans to the other side of Lake Pontchartrain, that's real terra firma, that's real land. Everything south of there, everything south of it, is soil brought from somewhere else. And gravity's pulling it down, it's wet, and it's not compacted. Gravity's pulling it down, but every 4 or 5 years, the river would flood. And so when the flood would go away from the river, the land was higher. So you had natural levees built. That's where, when we came in, that's where people moved to. But we didn't like the flooding. We liked the land, didn't like the flooding. Finally, in 1927, we got serious about stopping the flooding, but also to make the economic nerve that the Mississippi River is to the United States. You know, so we live, that is the Continental River, and the Midwest would not be great without having that river system. That's why Thomas Jefferson said we're going to buy Louisiana, because he understood it. The price of putting something in a barge to get it another place, it's 1/50th of putting it in a truck and 1/20th of putting it in a train. So you want to not burn fuel, put it in a barge. But the point is, that's how critical it is. Very, very critical. And the thing that, as to stop the flooding, there was also the other issue of navigation. So if you took the Mississippi Valley, which was miles wide, and the river all over the place in there, and you bring it just to 1 mile and less, then the velocity of the water would keep the river clear. And that worked out fine. Go ahead and put the slides up. The next slide. And here you see, this is from the shuttle was coming into Florida. So on the left side of the picture, you're looking at the Texas coast. And then you see the little white area, that's about where the Louisiana coastline starts. Then you see the little shady stuff coming out, the yellow and the blue. That's sediment coming from the Mississippi River into the Gulf of Mexico. Now we have a continental shelf that goes from 0 to 300 feet. Well, in western Louisiana, you have to go out about 200 miles before you get to the end of the shelf. The Mississippi River on the east side it's at the shelf. Now, it's built up to the shelf, but why is it not building anymore? Because it's going into 1,000 feet of water, and it keeps on getting, you will not build any land. So we have gotten all that silt that built the area going off the shelf. Gravity is still pulling down, so we're losing elevation. Now we're losing, the last study that I saw, about 6 millimeters a year. And we have another place to check tides in Pensacola. And they lose about 3 millimeters a year. So basically, we're losing 6 to subsidence and 3 to sea level rise. So when people talk about why we're flooding more, the controlling factor is not global warming, it is subsidence. Now, there may come a time when it is, but at this point, it's just, the way I look at it, the cake is subsidence to Louisiana, and the icing is sea level rise. And so we have, next slide. Now, this tremendous loss that took place, we had a good vegetative map in 1956 to kind of show the loss from 56 to the 70s, but I said, man, it's been a lot worse than that. Just in my lifetime, I've seen the coast disappear. And so I got a friend of mine who was at LSU, and I said, I want you to digitize old state maps, because cartography was not bad a couple 100 years ago. And so he did that. So we went 1839, 1870, and I said, digitize like you digitize a map today. And 1993 was the day. That was the year. And the prediction of 2020 is not that far. Please look at 1839, the solid green all the way to the Barrier Island. And then you look in 2020, that is how terrible the land loss issue is. There is nothing like it. I was watching on television, CBS, Sunday morning, big program. There's a little island in Chesapeake Bay, and they have 20 people that are not living the life they used to live. That's nothing compared to the problem that we have here. But that's why learning it at that time and that day, I've worked emergency preparedness, coastal restoration, and hurricane preparedness, hurricane levee system, and flood protection. But every time I start any talk, I explain that. And I've been doing 3 and 4 talks a month like for 40 years. So I thought everybody knew. So I stopped talking about it a while, and they didn't. It's too complex. It's too to understand. Yeah, keep going. So I'm going to have to hurry and go through these slides. Again, same slide. Now, if you take this and go 5,000 years ago, and we'll take 5,000 years ago, this would be blank, except for just north of the Lake Pontchartrain, that you see that piece of land. But if you'd go a 1-minute time lapse in 5,000 years, you'd see the Mississippi River going back and forth like a garden hose, but it's spewing out mud along with the water. Bayou Lafourche was the Mississippi River some 1,200 years ago. And until 1903, 12% of the water, as it filled in and went to the new line where it passes in New Orleans, till that time we had 12%, but in 1903 we actually cut off the water from the Mississippi River and to stop flooding. You cut the source off and you're not going to flood. But what happened, saltwater intrusion came in, and our lower communities right away had saltwater intrusion come in and stop the farming in some of the lower communities. Next slide. Just to see our comparison to New Orleans, 5 minutes, all right. Comparison to New Orleans, Port Fourchon, that port supports 90% of all deep offshore oil in the Gulf of Mexico. The federal government gets $6 billion a year from leases and royalties. We, our levee district, begged the governor to sue the United States to give us a share of that $6 billion, because when there's drilling on federal land inside of a state, in the state itself, they were getting 50%, and we were getting nothing. And yet the work from offshore was impacting us many more times than it was any interior state. Well, the governor finally did it. She sued, and there was a lease sale that was going to take place, and the lease sale took place, and we asked to sue, and they said, well, you got to sue during advertisement. And she said, well, we don't think we'll be successful. But then Hurricane Katrina hit, We asked her to, again, there was another lease sale coming up. We asked her to sue. She did. And the judge, we asked for a TRO, temporary restraining order. And he refused the temporary restraining order. But went on for another 30 pages that said, once you get damages, then come see us again. So with that, our senator went to the head of her committee, which is involved in offshore oil, and we had legislation passed, and now we're getting 37.5% of new production. But now that means millions of dollars that we're using to maintain or at least slow down the loss that's taking place. But I worked with the Senate, and we had a state program called CPRA, Coastal Protection Restoration Authority, that takes care of all flood protection and restoration. And it's been spending millions of dollars a year on flood protection, which is absolutely necessary, and protection of some of our coasts. I'll get the next picture up. This is the system I'm in charge of. We had a Hurricane Ida. We had winds up to 150 miles an hour. We had storm surge up to 16 feet, and our levee system kept the water from getting inside. Not one home flooded. We did have some overtopping. The storm that hit us with that 16 feet and with that 140 and 50 miles an hour was more than what hit New Orleans. Now, Katrina, when it hit New Orleans, New Orleans got the backside of it. Waveland, Mississippi, got a 28-foot storm surge. Wiped out everything. Those poor people had Hurricane Camille in 1969, had a 23-foot storm surge, and some homes and buildings didn't flood. You figure you're hurricane-proof, and here comes Katrina and wipes them all out. And yet our system, and we had to fight the government. The government, they knew they had ways of doing things. We didn't disagree that it was good to do it their way, but we couldn't afford it. So we did it in an affordable way. And we actually didn't get permission from them. We asked them, they said, no, you don't have it. So we went ahead and built it anyway. And had we not, our community would be gone. Right now, in South Louisiana, if you don't have hurricane protection, your community is limited on how its future. And that's how different. And we'll continue having that threat. Anytime, 1 minute. Okay, keep going. If you look, you can see that kind of square portal, that's a farm area. And there's some marsh on the outside. We actually started in 1990 and to 2000 doing some restoration projects and kept it intact, and it worked pretty well. All right. This is after Hurricane Ida. We lost 40 square miles of marsh, and some marsh that we had reinstated, had it going well, and it was doing well and growing well, but with no new sediment going in there, it was just the roots in other types of roots instead of being in soil, and that storm just cleared it all out. Next one. This is that's a 17-foot levee, and the top of the grass line up there is at 16.5. Next slide. And as you can see, the levee is taller than the houses. Sadly, 40% of the people stayed. They should have all left with a storm, a Category 4 storm that hit. And we were lucky that we didn't flood. And had we flooded, had we lost the levee, we would have had hundreds, if not thousands, of people killed. Next slide. Just some other areas. To the left, you see the damage on our pump station. We also get 60 inches of rainfall a year, so you have to pump the water out of your system. The water in that pumped area is at a -7. The water on the outside is at a +1. And those buildings in the background, that's the largest alligator farm maybe in the United States. There's easily over 100,000 alligators. And his customers are all of the big, Prada, in Europe, all of those places. In fact, I visited one and saw a pile this high of alligator hides from Louisiana. Yeah. Okay. Again, another view. And you see the cattle out in the pasture. That land is like 4 feet below sea level. And yet, because of our system, we can continue to live and work here. Of course, if you flood your cattle pasture, you might have an utter disaster. Okay. All right, next slide. Houseboats, everything got pushed up on the levee. We had over 1 million cubic yards of material on the levee that we had to take off, get ready for next hurricane season. Next slide. And yeah, you can see this one, the debris is on the levee. It doesn't quite get over. That's how close we were.
30 miles of the levee were within a foot, and yet over the top 3 places, and still not one house or business flooded. And we did have terrible water damage. These are escape pods for the offshore structures that are 40 miles off the coast. They're up at 30 feet high. And if there's something on the rig's breaking or on fire, you get in these capsules and they launch. And these things got taken off by the storm and brought 50 miles onto our levee. It's amazing the force of what it can do. Yeah. Again, just another place that's a big levee. Other people have small levees attached, but you see it's all flooded in the water. Elevation is the salvation to inundation. If you're higher than the flood with your levee or build your house, as long as that water's going under you, it's an inconvenience. If it gets your house, it's a disaster. Next slide. Again, this is Hurricane Ida. If it had moved 20 miles to the right, this area in B, that's the levee system, $14 billion system on the west side of the Mississippi River. And the Hurricane Center is saying that they would have flooded. And why do you put up with all of those risks? Okay. Sometimes fit, but not in Louisiana. And it's true. Again, I paid my way through college working on the shrimp boat. Of course, during semester, I couldn't go on the shrimp boat, just worked at the bar, And I was an environmentalist way back then, because every Saturday night I'd go out and try to pick up trash. All right, any questions? Y'all don't like environmental jokes?
Thank you for your service, Wendell.
Hi, I'm Dr. Alicia Renfro. I'm a coastal scientist with the National Wildlife Federation, and I'll be talking to you today about a campaign we're involved in here in Louisiana called Restore the Mississippi River Delta. Next. So first I'll get to the why. In Louisiana, we are experiencing a coastal land loss crisis. We've lost 1,900 square miles of land since the 1930s, and we stand to lose another 3,000 if we don't do restoration and protection at the scale needed to address the crisis. And what's at stake if we lose that land? First of all, the habitat. Some of the most productive habitat in the country is found here in Louisiana that supports fish and wildlife, not only in the state, but throughout the Gulf of Mexico. It's also the first line of defense for a lot of our coastal communities, pulling down some of that storm surge before it impacts the levees that protect the communities. It's also an economic engine. It helps fuel our nation. It feeds our nation. Though commercial fisheries are really important, the Mississippi River itself is really important as a conduit of all those agricultural goods they produce in the Midwest and getting them out onto the world market in a more reliable and cheaper way. And finally, it's home. It's home to a population that has lived here for a long time, that lives in the land and finds this place to be really special. I remember years ago seeing a map showing like where people in the US move like from state to state, and in Louisiana, there's not a lot of movement out of state. People stay within the state. It is their home. We want to live here, we choose to live here, and we will continue to do so for as long as we can. Next. And the way of life is really at risk as we continue to lose this land. 30% of the commercial fishing in the continental US is brought to dock in Louisiana. A lot of our population lives near the coast. There's a lot of jobs associated with the coast. There's a lot of our parishes that are in the coastal areas, as well as we have millions of tons of product that is moving down the river and onto the world market through Louisiana. So the Mississippi River Delta Coalition is the coalition of environmental organizations that have come together to advocate for restoration of Louisiana on a local, state, and federal level. And it consists of the National Wildlife Federation, Environmental Defense Fund, National Audubon Society, and then a local organization called Pontchartrain Conservancy. So we all have different things that we work on, but we come together to kind of give one voice to coastal restoration in Louisiana. Next. And this is why. So this is looking at the land we've lost since the 1930s, and then we could lose so much more moving forward. So blue is everything we've lost, green is everything we've gained. You may notice there's only a couple very small spots of green. Next. And so the way we work is we work on the ground. We have people who do outreach, we have people who do communications, we have policy people, and we have scientists. I am a scientist, I am not a comms person, and I apologize for that because our comms people would do a much better job than I would at this. But we work on the ground, working with communities, providing information about what's happening on the coast, what they can do to advocate for their communities, build up that education and that confidence for them to interact with their policymakers, their legislators, and to educate their fellow community members. We also try to work to make sure that we're grounded in science. We're doing the right things for Louisiana that can build land and protect communities for the long term. Not just today, not tomorrow, but for the long term. Next. And we do this by hosting public meetings, talking to people about what's happening, helping them understand how they can comment, how they can contribute to the body of work that's going on to help protect and restore coastal Louisiana. We do youth programs. We actually developed a 360 video of the Atchafalaya, the Wax Lake Delta, which is one of the places we're actually building land in Louisiana. So it's kind of like this drone 360 video overview. It's a little disorienting. You're in the air and it feels like you might die. But it's this amazing product to show people what it's like, what this coast could look like if we did restoration in a big way, in a strategic way. We also do a lot of field trips, taking policymakers, community members, journalists out into this area that is often inaccessible. You don't get to see it most of the time. Even if you live along the coast in Louisiana, it's still kind of hidden in a lot of ways. And so getting people out there to experience it firsthand, to understand what the coast looks like, what it feels like, and really kind of bring that into their heart so that they can understand how to advocate better. We also engage journalists locally and regionally, help visualize data in different ways. We do blog posts. We help participate in the Cook-Off for the Coast, which is a competition in St. Bernard Parish where we bring people together to compete and make like the best food. Things people love in Louisiana, the coast and food. And we love to compete against each other about who makes the best food. So it's an amazing opportunity to interact with the community as well as just see what all Louisiana has to offer. Next. Now, one of the big things that we always have to think about when it comes to coastal restoration is funding, and that's a big sticky thing. We're always trying to work on the federal level in particular to secure this long-term funding streams for restoration. As Wendell pointed to earlier, like the Go Mesa funds being really important. A lot of our restoration currently is being funded through the Deepwater Horizon oil spill funds, but we're also looking for like what are other ways that we can actually continue to fund restoration at the scale needed. We also need to protect the existing coastal funds. There is always the possibility that someone will try and siphon it away to something else, and we want to make sure that it continues to go towards the things it needs to go towards. Now, one of the things that we've done, and unfortunately I forgot to change this is actually 2025 coastal issue polling. One thing that we've done for several years now is to work with a firm to do polling about coastal issues around the state to understand messaging, but also just to get a temperature of what people are thinking about and feeling along the coast. And what you can see is a lot of people agree that we are having a coastal land loss crisis, or it's at least a major problem. We have 96% of people that also agree that even if we can't go back to the previous footprint, that 1930s footprint of the coast, that we should do as much as we can to preserve as much of the coast as we can. And we also have 84% of the people who have a favorable opinion of policymakers who support action to restore and protect our coast. And then we even have 69% of people who agree that climate change will have a serious impact on our coast. And I will tell you right now, these professional poll workers, they look at this data and they say, nobody agrees this much on an issue, any issue they've ever looked at. This is the strongest thing. We can't agree on anything these days, but we all understand that coastal restoration is really important for the future of Louisiana. Next. And one of the things that is kind of at the heart of our coastal restoration program in Louisiana is the Coastal Master Plan. And this was born out of that 2005 hurricane season. For a long time, we've been doing restoration, we've been doing protection projects, but that 2005 hurricane season with Katrina and Rita made the state realize these things go together, and we actually have to put together a larger vision of what the coast could look like, that we can no longer do kind of random acts of restoration, but we have to have projects that work together to build the more resilient future. And this is at the heart of our coastal program, and it is something that a lot of people agree needs to continue to be worked on. Next. And this isn't something that's just relevant to coastal Louisiana. A lot of states are actually looking towards coastal Louisiana to understand how they can plan for the future, how they can do work to actually plan to protect their communities better. After Hurricane Sandy in 2012, New York City was looking for how can they actually protect that financial district. They talked to people in coastal Louisiana to do that better. Next. They also have the Texas Coastal Resiliency Plan that has been developed in the aftermath of Deepwater Horizon oil spill so that they can understand where they should put their restoration funds moving forward. Next. And then there's also Virginia Coastal Master Plan. Then they really talked to a lot of people in Louisiana who'd worked on previous coastal master plans in Louisiana to understand how they should do their master plan and looking forward to not only like what restoration they should invest in now, but what their future could look like with and without restoration. Next. And then the last, most recent one, and this one is just getting kicked off right now. Some of my colleagues in the National Wildlife Federation are working on it, is a Tampa Bay region coastal master plan. It's not the whole state of Florida, but it is this large metropolitan area where they're trying to figure out, okay, what do we need to do? What are the projects we need to invest in? This is a community, there's a lot of people, and they are right on the water. And of course, this is something that had been in the works for a couple years, but this past hurricane season really drove home the point that they really need to think big, on a big scale about what this should look like. And this all comes down to our work in coastal Louisiana is really, unfortunately, catalyzed by the crisis that we're in. And it really makes it so that we have to work together in the most thoughtful and strategic way to build a more resilient future for coastal Louisiana.
Last but not least, I am the barrier to get you out of here today. So thank you all for being with us today. I'm Lacey Mawassa, the Executive Director for the Coastal Center. I had the pleasure this morning of taking our Newcastle colleagues here through our Newcastle here on campus, the Coastal Center, which is really exciting. So just to give you a little bit of a background, and I'll try to keep it brief. Coastal Center started in around 2019. Our former governor decided we needed to have a coastal center close to the coast, identified Nichols to be the host of this facility. And so we started construction in August of 2023. And basically, there's several purposes of why this facility is here at Nichols State University. So part of our mission is looking at what can we do in this facility to support the Coastal Master Plan that CPRA has put together. And thank you, Dr. Renfro, for you got to take some of my speech out of here by talking about CPRA and the master plan and some of the issues. So essentially part of our mission and goals is to support CPRA's master plan with that applied research that could be done here through Nichols State University and along our coast. Another important component is to serve as a collaboration hub between many different entities. That's at the local, state, and federal levels, bringing a lot of people to the table to come up with solutions to combat our coastal crisis issues here in the state. And of course, one thing we want to do is inspire future students. We're going to have an educational exhibit space in the center to inspire and engage our community and future students to get involved in many different types of programs here at Nichols State University, anything from mass comm to biology to sciences to geomatics to even our education department and business departments. All of these programs have some sort of involvement in our coastal crisis. Next slide. And then lastly, another big component is the research. That component of supporting the master plan, conducting some of that research here at Nichols State University and along our coast to support the master plan and support the science-driven research that supports those initiatives. So CPRA has basically dubbed us with a few areas of focus that they would like us to look at specific to the Atchafalaya Basin planning, also the Terrebonne Basin, Lafourche Delta, physical restoration and monitoring, protection. I talked to the group this morning about shoreline protection and these innovative solutions that some of our local companies are coming up with regards to marsh creation and shoreline protection. The Cajun coral that's being created by Danos and Natrix here locally in our region. They're building these concrete structures and putting them along our coast that are beneficial to habitat and also protecting our levees and those sorts of things around our landscape. Water quality, sedimentation, habitat and fisheries, vegetative response, modeling and surveying, and of course, like Dr. LaFleur said, that cultural component. We need to focus on the people here in South Louisiana. And the reason Nichols is a good place to do that is because we're already a coastal campus. Here at Nichols State University, we already have at the Coastal Center, which is close to being completed, and I'll talk to you about that in just a bit. We have two main campus science buildings and technology facilities. We had the Center for Bayou Studies. We have a University Farm and Field Research Station, which is just a few miles south of here. We have a Fouchon Coastal Marine Lab facility, as well as some resident collaborating agencies. So like Dr. Renfro mentioned, you know, with the multitude of agencies that we have throughout the state, it literally takes a tribe of people to work towards these initiatives and these solutions for coastal Louisiana. So the facility itself, just to give you a little bit of background, is broken up into 3 different components. We have a conference center, we have our educational and exhibit space, and then we have our research labs. So here are a few pictures of just, it's not this sunny here today, I apologize, I wish I could have brought you this weather. We had one day probably in the last few weeks where we had sun, but these are a few current pictures of the facility. Current construction progress, we're down to punch list items now, so we still have contractors in the building and still have some touch-up paint and things being installed, furniture being delivered. But one of the components in our atrium is this windswept tree. So you heard culture, you've heard people today, you've heard caring for the environment and resilience. And this windswept tree that'll sit in our atrium hopefully soon is a representation of that resiliency of coastal Louisiana. We'll have different components throughout the atrium, including graphics that people can basically come through the facility and learn about coastal Louisiana. In addition, we have the educational exhibit space, and the educational exhibit space, the inspiration of that is actually marshes of coastal Louisiana. So our natural marshes, which are kind of rounded, and then these linear marshes kind of in between, if you look in the center of this picture, represent marsh terraces. So that's what we created our exhibit space to look like. So the floor plan actually has those components. Each of these platforms will have a dedicated topic, and I can talk to you about this for hours, I promise, but I won't keep you here today. Just know that if you're interested in exploring the space or visiting the center, stay tuned on the website. You can follow us on social media, and we can get some more information to you about this space. But this is a rendering of what that space will look like upon entry. We'll have stationary graphic, digital components, a lot of components hopefully to educate people about what happens here in coastal Louisiana, and also to inspire them if they want to get involved, get engaged. How can they volunteer? What organizations can they volunteer with throughout the state? And just another picture of the renderings. So I'll go through these next few pictures relatively quickly. These are pictures inside the facility. So like I said, furniture's being delivered, things are getting put into place. But the facility is about 40,000 square foot. We have about 6,000 square foot of educational exhibit space between our atrium and exhibit. We have about 6,000 square foot of meeting room space. We have a lot of areas throughout the facility that are meant for collaboration. And if you look at this picture on the right, Dr. LaFleur mentioned those flotons. We actually picked this furniture because it kind of looks like floton marsh. And again, just different meeting spaces throughout the facility. This, and I don't have pictures on here, but they walked around this morning, and a lot of our offices, our labs, have storefronts. So the facility is meant for people to come throughout and not just explore the exhibit space and the atrium, but go throughout the entire facility and see what work's being done in the labs. And this is a picture of a few of our labs. throughout the facility. And then I'd just like to wrap up by mentioning that this collaboration hub is extremely important to us. Within the Coastal Center, we will have representatives from the Governor's Office of Coastal Activities housed in the facility, representatives from the Coastal Protection and Restoration Authority, our nonprofit organization partners at Restore Retreat, which is an advocacy agency, and they also actually rebuild marsh and put plants out on new marsh creation. BITNEP is the Barataria Terrebonne National Estuary Program. They will be housed in the facility, as well as the Center for Bayou Studies and others. So those are just to name a few. I mentioned the Farm and Field Research Station, our Fouchon facility very briefly. And just lastly, I'd like to wrap up with just a 30-second explanation about Balanced Media and the Human Platform and what we're launching through the Coastal Center as far as a data refinery. But I'll give you just a small glimpse of this. Basically, a platform driven by AI that can make many different data sets communicate. So if we think about all the data sets between our researchers and other state organizations, Wildlife and Fisheries, NOAA, BOEM, all of these organizations, this platform has the ability to make those data sets communicate. That's very, very tip of the iceberg of what this platform can do. But just to wrap up, if anybody would like any additional information about the Coastal Center or any of the work happening here at Nicholls State University, we're all available to answer questions, and please reach out to any one of us for additional information. Thank you.
I'm going to wrap things up for you. All right. So thank you all for attending this afternoon. I want to thank my presenters. I'm a newspaper person. I'm not used to cameras. But before I go any further, Lance, you want to introduce your crew. This is Lance Arnold. He's our video audio person, and he's got some students that have been working with us. Just as an aside, he would be upset with me. He's a member of our football team, and on August the 23rd, I believe, the only collegiate game being televised will be a home game. Nicholls playing, I'm not sure who we're playing.
Incarnate Word.
Incarnate Word. So tune it in. What time?
12 p.m.
All right, so tell your friends and neighbors. And I should say, not soccer, football. So anyway, the last thing is, once again, thanks to our presenters. On the way out, I have some, or we have some bags for you guys. I need to explain. Y'all will get it, but they may not. So we have these bags from Rouse's. On the way in, they were asking about, things, and I said, well, if you want to get some food, Rouse's is right down the road from where you're staying. They're staying on campus. But those bags, I have 50 of them. I almost never remember to bring them into the store, but they're so that you don't keep reusing plastic bags. But one of the bags is green, and it says the Trinity. So what that is in South Louisiana cooking, it's what? Carrots, celery, and onion. No, not my bad. In France, I think they use carrots or something like that. Yeah, somewhere. Not here. Okay. So I don't know. I'm not a chef. The other one is char-grilled oysters, which, if you're familiar with Drago's or some of the local restaurants, that's a delicacy. In the bag, we have some shrimp powder, which is dried shrimp. I love this stuff because if I'm making for gumbo, right, you add it, deepens the flavor. We have some pralines, which is a local sweet in there. But the big thing, and there's some other items, but there is a collector's item in there, and this y'all should pay very close attention to. We had somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 inches of snow in Thibodaux this year. All right, and it was a record snowfall. So the students put together basically a photo scrapbook of that event. So y'all want to keep that too, because in my lifetime, which is, I haven't seen it in my lifetime. We haven't. These guys won't see it again either. So anyway, but once again, thank you for your time. Pick up your gift bags on the way out. And I would like the presenters to take a picture. Yep. Okay?
this is just a little something from all of us in the council.
Okay, all right. Thank you, appreciate that, thank you.
And Lorene, thank you so much. And Dr. Kelly, thank you so much for inviting us and for joining us today. It's a little something. It's a little something. So we're really grateful. Thank you so much.
All right, cool. All right, so if I could get our United Kingdom guests to come here, and we'll kind of figure out the arrangement with this.
If it's big enough.